almost there. You're live.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning and welcome to our 2021 session of RN Lobby Day. We wish we were all with you at the Capitol, but we're thrilled to be here with you on this electronic platform. I think there's greater than 600 people that are going to join us today, so we're going to have a very exciting morning. We have a wonderful list of speakers and people who have come to educate us about lobbying and advocacy. And after this year of this pandemic and such horrific things, I just want to personally, as the ANA California president, just thank you for your service to our community and to our world. This has been a year we will all remember forever. And I want to thank you for your profound professionalism, caring, and nurturing that you've done for our communities. There's no thank you that can even really say it appropriately. So we have a great morning lined up for you. And on behalf of the board and the office and our executive director, Marketa Huskova, Jared, and Teresa, and all of the ANAC board members, I just want to welcome you to this terrific morning. So with that, I'm going to give it away to our Ledge Director, Lindsay Duggan. Take it away, Lindsay.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to start off kicking off this great event of RN Day on the Capitol with the announcement of our Advocacy Institute Fellows for 2021. This is our first year doing an Advocacy Institute at ANAC, and I am thrilled. So we have 4 fellows this year: Carolyn Duenas, Carter Todd, Alicia Cantonese, and Teresa Gwen. I'm so excited to have you guys on as fellows and excited for what the next year is to come. Pass it off over to Marketa, our executive director.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Marketa Huskova. I am the executive director of ANA California, and I should be joined here right now with our lobbyist, Roxanne Gould, who I think is having some technical difficulties. So I will kick it off. Welcome. This is always a fantastic event, and we are so happy to have you here. Hey, there is Roxanne. So there she is. I think she's calling us from a remote location, so that's why we couldn't see her before. This is always a fantastic event, and as many of you know, this is one of our flagship events, and the fact that we cannot be with you in the Capitol yet again, it's really sad, and we don't like it this way, but we are very happy and very thankful to the West Coast University for helping us reach as many people as we can through Zoom link rolled into YouTube, and so we can have as many people as possible. So this is all for you. As Anita mentioned, we have fantastic speakers. The event today starts with me and Roxanne going over an overview of where we are in the legislative process, what bills we are working on. Later, you will hear from a senior director from ANA, Janet Hebler. She will talk about what different issues are being discussed in legislature across the country. Then you'll hear from BJ Bartleson, who is the vice president for California Hospital Association, and she's a nurse by herself, and so she is a fantastic advocate. Then later we will be joined by Lydia Bourne, who is also a nurse, and she is a lobbyist, and she is advocating on behalf of school nurses. And many years in the past, school nurses tried to pass legislation to have more school nurses, obviously, on premises. And this year, I think, another thing that the pandemic spotlighted is the important role of school nurses. So Lydia will talk to us about one of their bills. And we will also be joined, if technology allows, by Assemblyman Wood, who is the chair of Assembly Health Committee. Later, we will be joined by Assemblyman Arambula, who is a physician. Dr. Wood is a dentist. Assembly member Arambula is an emergency physician from Central California. So he will join us to say hello. And last but not least, at 11:30, we will be joined by Senator Caballero, and she will present ANAC, all of you and the board, with a Senate resolution that will be again very prominently placed in our office. So those are things between now and 11:40 5. So let's kick it off. I would like to introduce Roxanne Gould. Many of you know her. Roxanne Gould has been ANAC contracted lobbyist since I think 2015, 2016. And Roxanne, will you tell us a little bit overview? Where are we in the ledge session? What's going on? How are they doing business? Is it virtual? Do they come to the building? How do we do meetings? Is it all Zoom, or are we meeting socially distanced? Just tell us something, because this is brand new for everybody.
There's a lot of questions all at once,
I know, but you remember all of them.
Well, so no, we're not doing face-to-face meetings. It's a bizarre legislative world where we just started the first year of a 2-year session. The Capitol is sort of open. They are holding committee hearings typically on the Assembly and Senate floor to make sure everyone is socially distanced. They will allow a couple of people to actually testify in the committee, but I've had several legislators joke with me that they don't see lobbyists anymore, except for one in particular who was always in the Capitol, and so it's sort of a running joke about him being there. But we lobby remotely and we testify in committee remotely. And I've been in committee hearings in queue to testify, and the operator will come on and say, you're caller number 142. So I guess the beauty of it is more people have access and the ability to communicate with legislators and committees. The downside is I don't know how influential it is to have 142 people say their name and say they're in support and then move on to the next one. So it's not going to be anytime soon that the Capitol opens up. We think potentially the middle of June, based on the governor's recent statements about trying to get the state back on track and back open. But even still, they're going to still discourage being there in person. And it's not going to be until next year that we potentially get back to the way, even a little bit, the way things used to be. And kicked things off in January, 2,400 bills have been introduced. So COVID hasn't slowed down legislative activity. It just has impacted the way we can communicate and try to influence the outcome, the way we try to stop bad bills and push good bills. But it's been a learning process, and I think we're all getting very good at Teams and Zoom, and so good that we're tired of it. But at least it has allowed us a way to communicate, and so we should be grateful for that anyway.
Of course, I'm mute. So this will be fun today. So Roxanne, I know that we covered it in some of our legislative recordings, but for everybody who is watching, and plus we are recording this, so we will be sharing it with schools of nursing, and we will upload it to our website. So would you please cover one more time what are the 4 most important topics that the legislative leadership and the governor said that the bills should be about, even though there is 2,400 of them?
Sure, and this is what happened last March when the legislature adjourned for 2 weeks, and that became obviously several months. But the governor made the statement that if you're going to have legislation, and leadership agreed with him, it had to be either addressing homelessness, which in January he had made his #1 priority, but then that evolved to obviously COVID, fighting fires is a #1 priority. Obviously, year after year, things are getting worse and worse. And then the 4th thing was budget, because we started the year in 2020 with a surplus. By May, when the governor did his May revision of the budget, we were at something like a $56 billion deficit. So this year, things are looking a little rosier because there were more conservative estimates of how much money we thought we would be bringing in, and we brought in more than we expected. So we actually do have a slight surplus. But they're still making the statement that if you're going to introduce legislation, it should be on fires, wildfire, budget, or COVID. And legislature has basically ignored that. And you have same as it always is, they're introducing things in dealing with air quality, water, agriculture, veterinarians, everything. And so we're drinking from a fire hose every year, and nothing has changed this year.
And also, what am I on mute? No, I'm good.
No.
Also, I know that we're still dealing, obviously, with COVID-19, and so another priority is still COVID-19 resources, correct? because
Absolutely.
that is not going away. You all know that we are live on the Hoover app. You all received emails. You can download it. There is a link to download. You have to put the email that you registered with, and then it will allow you to go into this event. And yesterday I was cruising on Hoover app, and it's actually very user friendly. And so yesterday I was cruising, and there was a discussion regarding PPEs. And so from last year, it changed from not having PPEs in majority of the hospitals to now we are hearing from our members that there are way more PPEs, because plus also there was a law last year, bill last year that a governor signed into a law that now hospitals must keep, I think, 3 months supply. But we talked about it, right, Roxanne? It was really important bill last year. And the reason I'm bringing it up is just to show you how sometimes complex and complicated issues are. Our legislative director, Lindsay, Duggan, Roxanne and I, we had a meeting with several of the legislators last year regarding the PPEs, correct? And so what was the biggest issue? That, right, Lindsay was telling them that it's great that you're telling us or mandating us that we must have PPEs, but the hospitals were having difficulties in gathering all the supplies, correct? So the supply was the issue.
Right, exactly. It was, the concept was we're all in total agreement. We should have access to as much PPE as possible. But the reality that Lindsay, brought to their attention was that it's great you're telling us to do that, but it's not happening. And, we need your help making that concept, that dream, a reality out there.
And so I think another interesting bill, dealing with the consequences of COVID will be a bill that we are following, and that's one of our priorities, and that's AB 562, AB Assembly Bill 562, authored by Assemblyman Evan Lowe, who is also the chair of Assembly Business and Profession Committee, and so he added co-authors Assemblymember Flora, Assembly Member Salas, and Assembly Member Chen. So now we have 4 authors. Now, Roxanne, wouldn't it be also something in the same area as the PPE? Because how can we mandate that all frontline providers who were taking care of COVID-19 patients will have access to mental health support? Wouldn't it be similar to last year mandated PPE? So how would we go about it?
Well, that's the devil is in the details, of course. Mental health is front of mind for the legislature in a multitude of areas, including kids and healthcare workers, of course. But COVID is impacting everyone in some very devastating ways in many instances. And so I don't know that they have determined yet how they're going to accomplish that outcome, but the fact that it's on their radar and a high priority is the right first steps for sure. But it hasn't been determined yet how they're going to be able to make people comply with that.
I spoke yesterday, or I was communicating yesterday with a nursing faculty at Los Medanos University, because they reached out to us a couple of months ago and asked us what is one of the most important issues where their students can help us advocate. And so we were discussing AB 562 yesterday. And so I suggested that they wrote this fantastic letter with article, how nurses and healthcare providers, how we've been struggling with PTSD and stress throughout the COVID pandemic. And so I mentioned that the bill AB 562 has passed the Assembly Business and Profession Committee, and now it's being heard where? At Assembly Health Committee. And guess who is chair of Assembly Health Committee? Assemblyman Wood, very kind man. He was kind enough to stop by our lobby day, I think last 2 years. And so he will put it on his agenda, and he will be hearing the bill next. So I asked them to direct that letter to Assemblyman Wood and the member of the Assembly Health Committee. The reason I'm talking about it is that it was really fantastic to see graduating nursing students taking the attention and the extra time and work to worry about their profession, and to tell them that, we see the stresses, we see the PTSD as graduating nurses, and we are not even in the profession yet. So I thought it was absolutely fantastic that these personal stories, because as Roxanne always says, it's the personal stories, how we convey our expertise and how we convey what we see around us. So they are using personal stories and what they've seen, when they could go to hospitals. And so I also suggested that they could connect with the California Student Nurses Association. And so if the California statewide organization also supports this initiative, this is really important. And so this is how we all can influence and make sure that our nursing practice, that we are supported and we get the mental health support we need. But again, as we talked about it, Roxanne, one thing is to pass a bill that mental health for frontline healthcare providers is important. And then the next thing would be regulation. And it just seems that regulation, we don't talk as much about it. So we really thought that this year, next to legislative advocacy, we also focus on regulation. And so Roxanne, after the bill, hopefully we'll get through Assembly and Senate, and I'm thinking happily up in the future, let's say that the governor would sign this bill. What is the next step? Who writes regulations?
Well, I mean, it depends on the subject matter, of course, but in this case, it would likely be, it could be Department of Public Health. It could be BRN could get involved. It could be a collaboration of multiple entities, because it's not specifying just nurses or just physicians or any particular career. So I think it could be a collaboration of multiple regulatory entities to determine, and they'll probably try to create sort of a cookie cutter approach, and then amend and alter as it needs to be specific to each individual career path.
Right. And so AB 562 is one of our priorities. And I believe that I think already have it on our website, or we are working on digital advocacy campaign where you can go, thanks to, fantastic work Jared is doing in our office, that you can go to our website and then you can be part of a digital campaign. The reason I am really spelling out this bill is because we all know what is going on in hospitals and clinics, and one of our board members works in nursing homes and long-term care facilities, and how difficult the situation is out there. Moreover, last week we were contacted by UCSF with their study focused on having data, recent data on how nurses are dealing very badly or not dealing with the stresses of COVID-19. And so that is the 2020-2021 data. And so I think it is on our Facebook I think we posted on Thursday and Friday. And I think that it's also on our website. So, please have a look, because that's why we're talking about this issue. That's why it is so important. All right. So next, so we covered that we are in the first year of the 2-year session. Do you remember off the top of your head, how many new Assembly members and senators do we have?
Oh, I didn't even think of that. I believe we're at 17. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Okay. So we have 17 new members. And so what would we do normally if it was not, social distancing, COVID, stay away, we don't want to ever see you? What would we do normally? We would set up meetings.
Right. And actually, it wouldn't be just with new members, but always with new members, where it would be, the Marquetta and Roxanne show, where we would go to their office. We would, we've said this in every single update we've given. Nurses walk on water as far as the legislature is concerned, and anyone in general. It seems as if everyone has a great nursing story. So we would walk in, say we're with American Nurses Association California, and they say, "Oh, my uncle's a nurse," or "My dad was taken such great care of by the nurses when they were in the hospital." And it was always a great way to start the conversation. And we would then articulate our priorities. If legislation had already been introduced, we would call it to their attention and give them our perspective on it, and then try to plant seeds for areas that they might consider introducing legislation that could help nursing in California in general, and then also dissuade them from doing anything that would harm the careers of nurses in California. But this year is a different year, as you said, and I've said, and so now it's get them on Zoom and try to have the same conversation. In the beginning, it was very awkward and rocky, and I think we're all sort of getting used to communicating this way. So it's 2021 is a new world for all of us, I believe.
Yeah, so we are we're starting with the new legislature, with the new members of legislature. They are called legislators. With me, English as my fifth language, half the time I speak Marketa and Roxanne understands me. So thank God when we go together and my tongue gets tongue-tied, I have Roxanne on my flank to make me really look good. And
this is what she meant. This is what she meant by that.
Yeah, because then it's like in Czech and Slovak and Russian, and it's all running in my head. And so thank God for Roxanne. So the reason I am sharing this somewhat embarrassing moment with you here now live is to show you that even though this is my work and it's utmost honor and privilege for me to have this position and to do this work, and I've been doing it for the last 6 years with Roxanne, I get tongue-tied and I, say the wrong sentence, and half the time I tell them assemblymen and they're senators, and then I walk it back and I said, oh, I'm sorry, I use the wrong terminology, or I have Roxanne there with me. This is the reason we are sharing it with you, is that we're all just human beings, and sometimes we get so excited about a meeting and sometimes we get slightly nervous about a meeting. So it happens all the time, and that is the only reason I'm sharing it with you here, because we actually learn from our in-person live events inside the beautiful Capitol, is that when I started to share my less than stellar embarrassing moments, it was not to embarrass myself or this fantastic organization, but to show you that it is a learning process. And usually I always say we always talk about one more issue, and that's I'll just tell you my very first meeting with Roxanne with an assemblyman in 2016, and Roxanne was kicking me under the table because she told me, like, when you make your point and they nod their heads, just stop talking, which I felt that I need to make it again and again and again because they will better understand. And so that was one of the issues. What was another lesson, Roxanne, we learned throughout the few years back when there was the mandatory vaccination issues? What was another lesson that we learned? We need to really keep our enthusiasm and our passion in check, right?
Right. And I mean, part of what you described when you said you try to make a point and they nodded their head, the lesson is read your audience. And if a legislator is not responding the way you want them to respond, pivot, figure out how to get them to respond the way you want them to, or as you said, stop talking. And with the mandatory vaccination issue, you had literally thousands of passionate, sometimes terrified people in the Capitol who hurt their own case because instead of reading the audience, instead of trying to use, I guess, more of a fact-based argument with legislators, in some cases they were yelling at legislators. In some cases they were crying, and I don't know how you tell someone to get that emotion out of their effort to influence someone. But if your objective is to influence them and educate and inform them, you need to educate and inform them and not alienate them. And that's what happened in many instances in that case. And there's still ripple effects to this day, because there are a few, and I would say just a few now, that have carried over with that same tactic and the same approach. And it is basically making the bulk of the legislature take a step back and say, I may agree with you, but I don't want to be a part of the way you're trying to influence it. And I don't want to be viewed as part of your effort because you're being viewed as unprofessional, irrational, emotional. And so it's, read your audience, try to take the passion out of it. And, what are the facts? And, lead with the facts.
Lead with the fact is always good, even though lately in politics we've seen that, even elected politicians would be leading with emotions, and we all saw where it leads. So that's why it is so important, and especially in nursing as an evidence-based practice profession, it's important that we have our facts. It's important that we have arguments, and also something what Roxanne really made sure we always talk about is that we should have answers prepared, and we should anticipate what the opposition will ask, right?
Exactly. So if you're the first one to talk to an elected official, you give them all of your arguments and why what you're trying to persuade them to to vote makes sense. They could completely agree with you. But if you don't give them the arguments the other side is going to make, then when that other side is in there talking to them, it's going to undermine everything you already tried to do. And if you arm them with why the other side's arguments aren't as influential or as accurate as yours, when the other side comes in, they're prepared. And it's sort of devil's advocate going on in their mind as the other side is trying to influence them.
Yeah, so I think we have 1 or 2 minutes left because we will be sharing a pre-recorded message, and then we will be joined by the fantastic Janet Hebler. Roxanne, so let's do this. So why do we walk on water as nurses? Well, because we are really good at what we do, but because we were ranked as the most ethical and trusted profession for how many years now?
Let's go with
19.
19. Oh.
So we always joke about how, when the two of us, when we go meet with elected officials, we always, make sure that we talk about how nurses were ranked by the Gallup poll as the most trusted and ethical profession for 19 consecutive years. And then Roxanne adds what?
I knew you had to bring this up every single time. So if nurses are the #1 most trusted profession, Marquetta, who would be ranked as the least most trusted profession in that little ranking?
Oh my God, Roxanne, who? Lobbyists!
Lobbyists. Except nursing lobbyists.
Yeah, of course, except nursing. Yeah, and if I may share one more somewhat embarrassing story, I don't know what's wrong with me today, but so we met with one elected California legislator 2 years ago, and this is what we did, right? We did this like, nurses, at that moment, nurses were 17 straight years ranked as the most ethical trusted profession, and then Roxanne goes, and of course, lobbyists, we are the least trusted profession, and we kind of started laughing a little bit, to which Roxanne said, oh, but not me, those are the federal lobbyists. And this elected official said, oh, in my previous career, I used to be a federal lobbyist. So that went well. That was a fantastic meeting.
We crawled out of the room.
but she supported nursing profession, and she understood why we are so important. So this was just our little welcome. And everything, we have fantastic speakers, and they will talk about all the important things. So I think, Jared, do we have our pre-recorded message from Dr. Beth Haney?
Yes, we do. Let me get that pulled up here. 1 second. I should have had plenty of practice doing this on Zoom calls that we've had this year. Here we are.
We still don't go anywhere.
Well, while he's
I'm sorry, that didn't work, did it?
No, it did not.
No.
I'm going to say while he's teeing that up, and if it cuts me off, that's fine. But I want to, I guess, give a little more overview of where we are in the legislative process, because as we said, we're just starting out the first year of a 2-year session. We are literally in the process of first committee hearings in legislation. And so bills are assigned to a particular policy committee, sometimes two, as in the bill Marquetta mentioned, is business and professions and health. I thought I might maybe was getting his video going. And then oftentimes if it costs money, then it goes to an appropriations committee. And if it's an assembly bill, it then goes to the assembly floor, and then it goes through the exact same process in the other house, assuming it passed in the first house. And so we are literally in the beginning phases, and we will be reaching out via, whether it's email, Facebook, Twitter, et cetera, to you, our members, to say, we need your help. We need you to weigh in with your particular elected official that represents you, and you will then be what we call grassroots. And you will be, constituents mean so much more to legislators than lobbyists in the state capitol. And you will be, basically are the people that help us accomplish the ANAC agenda, and because the ANAC agenda is for you, but be on the lookout for those types of outreaches.
So Jared, how are we doing?
Mm-hmm. Let's give it one more shot. Here we go.
Right.
Share my screen.
Yay.
Oh, we can't hear her now. We can't hear her. think we are having technical difficulties, and please bear with us. This is our first really large I'm sorry, what was I saying? Oh, please bear with us. This is our first really large virtual event. We're using 2 different platforms and rolling it into one. And so let's try one more time. And if not, we'll try to do it at 10:30. Jared, can we try one more time?
I'm going to get the video over to Steve and let the technical genius handle this one. So give us just another minute. I'm not sure if there's anything left to talk about.
No, it's all right. We'll wait. Thank you, Jared. We will wait for Janet Hibler to join us. And little time opened up at 10:30. And so hopefully we will be able to play it at 10:30 or 10:40. I think we could do it after BJ Bartleson finishes her talk. Maybe then we can share the video from Dr. Haney, who is a nurse practitioner and a mayor of Yorba Linda in Southern California. So
Janet is on. Janet is
here.
Janet is on, yay!
I do have a PowerPoint if it's not going to be too difficult. I don't have the ability to share right now. So if you can let me share my PowerPoint. If not, I can speak.
You are the co-host now. You have power.
Yeah, I have power.
Well, welcome, Janet. We are so happy to have you with us. Janet is based in Washington, D.C. on East Coast. She is the Senior Director for Government Affairs and State Advocacy. Anytime there is any issue happening in California in terms of nursing and healthcare policy and legislation, Janet is the first person I share it with. Anytime any of you has questions on what is going on in other state, Janet is the person I reached out and I connect her with you. And we are just so pleased to have you with us. Janet, welcome and take it away.
Thank you so much. And so I would just want to give an idea of the role that I play and why Marquetta has asked me to take a look at across the country. As Marquetta identified, I work with all of our state affiliates, state associations, in monitoring what's happening out there, trends, sharing intel and resources. So my focus is on the state. I'll mention a little bit of federal, and I certainly at the end, I have my email address, and you're welcome to reach out to me for any questions at all related to what I shared today or anything that was not shared with you. So I think you've kind of already gotten a sense from both Marquetta and Roxanne that just as associations have an agenda, so does each legislative body in the State House and even in Congress. And it's driven by the legislative leadership, and it's based on campaign promises and unfinished business from the previous session. Attention to those issues can certainly pivot and do, as we witnessed numerous times when there's a change in the environment, such as with the pandemic. In addition to the legislature's intended agenda, policymakers want to appeal to their constituents, and when asked, will introduce bills that address problems brought to them by constituents and special interest groups. And you heard that from Roxanne. Certainly, the governor had an agenda, and the legislative bodies probably had an agenda as well, but certainly as people go to them, they're going to introduce other bills. And this leads to a great deal of competition for legislators' attention, with an average of a few thousand bills introduced at the state level and almost 7,000 typically in Congress during a given session. Of course, many never make it out of committee for debate and further action. And you heard, again, Roxanne explain that when a bill is introduced, it's assigned to a committee of jurisdiction, maybe 2, and it's really up to the chair. The chair has tremendous power to decide whether even the committee debates that bill in committee before they vote it out, if they do, and take it up in each of the chambers. Regardless, there are so many issues with multiple approaches suggested that again, this creates a lot of noise for every legislative body. This is one of many reasons why it can take years to pass a bill into law, and a very small percentage of those are introduced ever do make it into law. Length of sessions also vary, and you're aware now that your session is 2 years, just as Congress is. There are 9 states other than California that have full-time legislatures, and while some states have sessions that are as few as 45 to 90 days. 4 states hold sessions every other year, which is hard to imagine. I come from a state that does not do that, and New York is my home state, and we met for 2 years as well. But the ones that meet every other year and their odd years are Montana, Nevada, North Dakota. But clearly a lot of work happens and takes place outside of session, obviously not just during session with citizen legislatures. Well, Congress's agenda also shifted in 2020. ANA took advantage of the heightened attention to nurses and access to care. We were finally able to advance one of our federal priorities, that of securing permanent authority for nurse practitioners, clinical nurse specialists, and PAs to order home health care services for Medicare beneficiaries, consistent with each state law. This was previously known as the Home Care Planning and Improvement Act. Additionally, we were able to get reauthorization of Title VIII nursing funding. This is nursing workforce development funds. This is the largest federal source for nursing education and workforce development, bolstering nursing education from entry-level preparation through graduate study. And this also was able to we were able to get this passed. Both were included, interestingly enough, in the package known as the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act. While there have been changes in membership of both chambers in Congress, we have been able to get champions from both sides of the aisle to reintroduce a workplace violence prevention bill, both in the Senate and the House. This is the same version that passed the House during the 116th Congress, thanks largely to the advocacy from our members across the country and reaching out to members of Congress. Our two lobbyists are now working hard to seek inclusion of other initiatives and packages as the timing aligns, as well as building additional strength around workplace violence prevention. I share these examples to demonstrate how timing, flexibility, and perseverance are essential in effective advocacy. Advancing legislation must be tempered with how to fund, and I think, again, you heard this a little bit from Roxanne. Unlike Congress using continuous resolutions to delay budget decisions, a top priority of every state legislative session is passing a balanced budget. It's a state constitutional requirement in all but one state. It's important to note that healthcare costs account for 1/3 of state budgets, ranging from financing Medicaid to paying for state employees and other populations such as prisoners. Medicaid alone is the single largest category of total state expenditures, second only to education. While most states projected dire losses as a result of the pandemic, just as California did, many found they experienced higher tax revenues than predicted, largely resulting from online sales. That was compounded with federal stimulus dollars, which helped offset expected losses. And by the way, for clarification, the states that were hit hardest economically are Louisiana, Oklahoma, Hawaii, Ohio, and Nevada. A couple you can identify based on tourism, Nevada and Hawaii. The others are for a variety of reasons. It's unclear what can be expected going forward, so most states are expecting some difficult choices for the fiscal year 2022 budget. And sparring has already begun between state legislators, governors about how the next bucket of federal monies from the American Rescue Plan Act will be spent. And as many people lost jobs in the past year, there has been a dramatic increase in Medicaid enrollment. In the American Rescue Plan, there is money included to incentivize states that do not or have not expanded Medicaid up to this point, and they will need to do it soon. The federal aid fight is part of a larger struggle over the balance of power in state governments that's emerging during the COVID-19 pandemic. A number of lawmakers are actually now in states saying it's time to reconsider governors acting without consulting them and during a crisis, basically limiting executive branch control. It's no surprise that 2021 legislative sessions continue to operate and will continue to operate through a COVID lens, which began with how to conduct business of lawmaking safely. While many issues were evident before the pandemic, they now have been highlighted or exacerbated. We had a child care and housing crisis before 2020. The pandemic just made it worse. Additionally, states have been challenged with dealing with policing practices and gun violence and funding infrastructure fixes for crumbling bridges and roads. Pre-COVID, we were witnessing a strong interest in relaxing occupational licensure laws stemming from a 2015 White House report. Just so you know that more than 1/4 of US workers are currently required to have a license in order to perform their jobs. The report recommends several best practices to ensure that licensing protects consumers without placing unnecessary restrictions or burden on employment, innovation, or access to important goods and services. Although well-intentioned, it's been important for nursing advocates to monitor such efforts, particularly with regards to the allied health care sector. Also growing in popularity pre-pandemic is telehealth, and it's continued to proliferate in the past year. As with most practices, legislation and regulation are slow to catch up. There continues to be a patchwork of laws and regulations addressing who, how, when, and the payment for delivery of care and services. It is unlikely the trend in telehealth will reverse itself. So revamping, or instituting laws are another priority. It is particularly challenging because telehealth is it's defined differently by nearly every state, and even differently within the federal entities of the government. Interest in interstate compacts for health professions has been appealing, with a desire to improve access through greater mobility of healthcare workers. The nurse licensure compact, of course, was first way back in 1999 when it was first passed into law in Maryland, and it was updated again in 2015. While others to date, and there are a number of other health professions are also looking at compacts, are quite different from the nurse licensure compact. For example, the medical compact is actually an expedited licensure model. The physicians still have to acquire a license in each state in which they intend to deliver care, whether it's remotely or in person. What remains unknown of the nurse licensure compact, though, whether it actually improves access, as advocates purport. Boards of nursing do not know who is practicing in their state, with or without the compact. So without that type of data, it is unclear if the compact is a viable solution for areas with a shortage. And no question, it did help make things easier for nurses to go to a surge area without having to secure an additional license if they were coming from a compact state and going to a compact state. But was that at the expense of their own state? Again, robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. And I think I want to remind nurses too, there is not a compact, obviously, in California. Efforts continue, but I think most nurses don't realize that they are still accountable for any laws or regulations in the state in which the patient is located, whether the care is delivered in person or using technology. Inadequate access and inequities to healthcare and a broken healthcare infrastructure, public health infrastructure, has also been a problem. I mean, public health has been underfunded and ignored for years pre-COVID. A recent report by Trust for America's Health revealed varying degrees of preparedness by states. Specifically, 20 states and the District of Columbia were high performers. And interestingly enough, California was a high performer. 15 states were placed in the middle preparation tier, and 15 states were placed in the lower tier. The report provides policymakers and advocates actionable data to improve their state's emergency readiness for future. And while there's a discussion at the federal level about the need to repair public health, states can't afford to wait for federal action. While mental health is not a new societal issue, debates by legislatures are challenging given the complexity of addressing the multiple issues within mental health and associated stigma which still exists with mental illness and addictions. ANA has been engaged with a coalition to advance initiatives through Congress, and we are very hopeful that we'll see some positive outcomes during this 117th Congress. The pandemic has also led to efforts to rejuvenate education and amending election laws, another place we want to monitor. Many states legislated liability protections for businesses, including healthcare facilities, should someone contract COVID on their premises. We also heard from nurses who contracted COVID and found themselves on leave without pay due to insufficient sick leave, and employers rejecting workers' compensation claims. Just over a handful of states have successfully secured presumptive workers' compensation laws, which mean the burden is now placed on the employer and the insurer to prove that COVID infection was not work-related, thus making it easier for workers to file successful claims. My state of Virginia was the latest to actually be successful, and we were able to, it was a hard fight, but we were able to actually get retroactive to March of last year for these individuals filing claims. Given the volume of competing issues and interests, it's critical that nurses unite and be strategic in order to get the necessary attention. Some nursing specific issues include title nurse protection, which has been obtained by at least 39 states, meaning no one can legally refer to themselves as a nurse unless licensed as a registered nurse or a licensed vocational nurse, as they're known in California. But there's been a new threat, the effort to establish the title of registered veterinary nurse. To date, no state has been successful, thanks to nurse advocates' rallying cries. Yet at least 7 colleges and universities advertise veterinary schools of nursing and subsequent degrees. The state affiliates, ANA state affiliates in respective states, have contacted the schools requesting them to not use the term nurse and nursing, to no avail. And the state attorneys generals are not interested, it seems, to get into the fray. In January, ANA filed a letter with the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, reporting this illegal violation of those state practice acts, those 39 states, and viewing it as a deceptive practice, suggesting that these individuals could refer to themselves as nurses upon completion. I would conclude that issues like this distract from the other longstanding workplace issues, such as violence and safe staffing, both of which have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Legislative efforts continue in states seeking either new laws or fixing existing statute related to those issues. Although I've put up here the 4 roles of APRNs, Advanced Practice Registered Nurses, scope of practice bills take on other forms as well, but I'll just focus here for a minute on the APRN efforts to seek full practice authority. These are bills that are always dreaded by state legislators, since they usually find themselves caught between opposing groups, medicine versus nursing. While many states continue to strive for full practice or full prescriptive authority, removing or reducing transition to practice hours for at least 2 to 3 of the 4 APRN roles, the American Association of Nurse Anesthetists is advancing a change from title to Certified Registered Nurse Anesthesiologist. These bills are currently active in 7 states, so you may hear of this, and it's not in California yet, but you may see it in the future. In a few states, physician's assistants are also seeking to remove themselves as dependent practitioners, an even bigger lift in my estimation, while pharmacists continue to update their practice acts and reflect what they truly do based on their education and training, and that is above and beyond just dispensing. Occasionally, we don't take the necessary time to identify and clarify the problem. And we often think legislation is the solution no matter what. And I would always say that legislation is intended to achieve uniformity, sustainability, and accountability. And accountability is really tough. It is a tough thing to get. This is where we want to know that there are penalties, there's somebody monitoring, there's somebody that they're holding this group or entity accountable for the law, and that there, again, like I said, are associated penalties should they fail to follow the law. So again, starting with gathering information, having an understanding of the political environment is extremely crucial, and all of the players, the legislators, the stakeholders, and is there a history with this issue? Really important to figure out whether this is the right time, again, to introduce a piece of legislation, or are we doing it just as a message bill, which is, again, we're going to get this out there. We're going to let people know it's an issue, knowing that it's probably not going to go anywhere this session. Consider your source for information as you're gathering your information. More people are online right now than at any point in human history. And digital media has had a profound impact on our views and subsequent actions or inaction. And policymakers, of course, are not exempt from this. The great thing about the internet is everyone can be a publisher. The really bad thing about the internet, is anyone can be a publisher. So one of the single greatest benefits of membership to your professional association is access to information. And because membership is diverse, your associations, diverse in your membership, your association is going to do its best to make sure that you are exposed to views outside of your immediate bubble. Really important to have that big picture. And the association's lobbyist, you have a wonderful lobbyist, Roxanne. I've had a pleasure of knowing her for several years now. Not only represents your interests when you can't be present, but also provides invaluable intel that contribute to identifying successful strategies for achieving success. That's the real key. Again, your voice is still necessary, as Roxanne said, but she is able to provide you the purview of the environment and the intel, what's going on behind the scenes. We know that relationships are critical in every aspect of life. They are enhanced with your colleagues through membership and expanded with other groups and stakeholders, but it's equally important for you to get to know your elected officials. Members of the State House and Congress need to hear from you. They appreciate your attention, since only about 10% of the population contacts their elected officials each year. Visit their websites to learn more about them, their background, their interests, the committee assignments, voting records. Sign up for the newsletter. I follow mine through a newsletter here in Virginia and stay connected in that particular fashion, excuse me. So follow them on social media. When able, follow them on live stream and hearings during floor debates and votes. I know that sounds a bit nerdy, but it can be interesting when you have the time. It will give you insight as to what they value and positions taken. Prior to COVID, I would have advised you to meet with them in person. So when we return to normal scheduled time, when they are at home in their district, no need to travel to the Capitol. They will have more time for you when they are not in session, distracted by committee hearings, meetings, lobbyist visits, and votes. Until then, connect virtually. Many of them are doing Zoom calls or town halls using Zoom with their constituents. I would always suggest it's best to meet the first time when you don't have an ask. Use the time as an opportunity to get to know each other. You want to let them know your interest and area of expertise so you can become their go-to person for healthcare issues. When the policymaker is not available, don't be disappointed if meeting with their legislative staff, who are just as instrumental in crafting bills and conveying policy desires. You may have heard the phrase, process is as important as the product, so strategies matter. And decisions as to the approaches to advancing an initiative depend on the issue, how contentious it is, the timing, again, who's involved, who's supporting, who's opposed, what is their subsequent influence, whether there's a history with the issue, available data, and then resources, of course, once again. Sometimes strength comes through partnerships with other groups, occasionally unlike alliances. Coalitions provide many benefits. You've got the increased power and heightened effectiveness through one voice, expands the reach beyond those connections that your ANA California may have, or even ANA may have at the national level, or your individual relationships. It again gives strength. It pools resources and expertise. So technical personnel and financial resources of one organization may not be sufficient. It may lend greater credibility and legitimacy based on the membership and affiliation. I will say on scope of practice issues, we've been really successful in working with AARP, both at the national level and in states. It's been really, really helpful in garnering a non-nursing specific perspective. Raise individuals members as well, members in the coalition, their public profiles. So deciding whether to join a coalition is one that should not be taken lightly, since membership can come with some challenges, particularly if the coalition is not well structured. Consider the groups, all the groups that are joining, their organizational styles, their cultures, their relationships before deciding to join with them. Seek intel from other groups and policymakers to try to avoid any pitfalls. Like the pitfalls can be ideological mismatch. Your identity may be defined by your membership, and if you choose this coalition, it may shift what your membership believes and supports. Unequal power is always a risk. Misplaced recognition can be another challenge where a particular group takes credit for everything that's done, and maybe that's okay, but you need to know that up front. Unequal workload, expected rules for engagement. How are you getting your voice heard within that particular coalition, particularly if you're a smaller group compared to some larger groups? And most important, what are you willing to compromise? Because in all likelihood, the larger the group, the more likely you are going to have to compromise. So we know that the current pandemic has immeasurably changed the conversation about healthcare delivery and workforce. The past few months have also accentuated the vulnerability of the nursing workforce, again, enhancing concerns about shortage. As we begin to move forward past the pandemic and into the aftermath, the nursing profession must consider what we want for our future and understand how we, as the nation's largest 4.2 million registered nurses and most trusted profession, now more than ever, can be part of the solution to the long existing societal health challenges and a broken healthcare system. Ultimately, when trying to influence policy change, you want others to think, feel, and act. And I still support what Roxanne had said earlier, but I do say you can speak from the heart, tell your personal story when you're talking to a policymaker. The head, what is the reason for supporting or opposing this particular bill, in this case, this initiative? And I think, again, making sure, as Roxanne said, that you understand what the opposition is going to say before you speak to them. This is the advantage of having your connection to ANA California and ANA, because we've already thought about that. But again, important to have that. And then the health. So speak to the heart, speak to the head, and speak to the health. And this is the impact the policy would have on the policymakers' constituents and community. They want to know, again, this is bigger than just you. And I love this quote. For those of you who were around in the 60s, Shirley Chisholm was a civil rights activist. And again, we know that when nurses do not regularly communicate with their elected officials, they'll listen to non-nurses about issues, impacting the profession, patients, and the healthcare system. And Shirley said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And here is my contact information for anything. And if you want to reach out to me, questions, our websites. And I'm so pleased to have been with you this morning. I hope this has been informative and helpful.
Thank you, Janet, so much. I have a couple of questions. I think Roxanne has another question. I know that many of our participants today, and actually majority of the nurses I've been communicating in California throughout the pandemic, they all appreciated the hard work ANA did right from the get-go on the COVID-19. And I would like to talk a little bit about President Grant's media appearances and really distributing the message. How important for policy and nurses is that nurses are in media. Oh my God, I can talk. I'm so sorry. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we've been pretty strategic about getting out there. And I will say there are times I'm sure that people are wondering why we're not speaking about a particular issue. And I will say sometimes it's because it may divert from something that's a bigger priority. I mean, because you mentioned passion before. Just because you have passion doesn't mean you're going to get action. And again, we have a diverse membership as ANA California does. And sometimes we have to walk a fine line to make sure we don't disenfranchise a particular group. We have to think about the bigger picture and the whole. So yeah, definitely being strategic and getting out there.
You know, I'm sorry, Roxanne, go ahead.
That's what I was going to say. I totally agree with what you're saying about being passionate is important, but there's a line you don't cross. There's a point where your passion is influential, and then there's a point where your passion alienates. And so I think it's understanding the difference between those two.
And it's hard. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. It's hard.
As I learned, it's really hard because I am passionate about this work. I am passionate about nursing because I always say that it's only thanks to nursing that I have this fantastic life, and I could study and I could live in America and I can have this amazing job and I can advocate for my profession. So I think sometimes the passion kind of comes out of me, but I am really learning to taper it and really learn evidence-based practice and arguments. And thank God I have Roxanne next to me. But Roxanne, did you have one question for Jen? Something about nursing champions?
Yes. And actually, Marquetta and I, and virtually every one of these sessions, again, we talk to the members of ANAC about how important it is to get to know your elected official, to be a resource. We don't have a single nurse in the California legislature. We have an emergency room ER. We have an emergency room doctor. We have the forensic dentist who's going to be speaking to us in a little bit, pediatrician in the Senate, but no nurses. And so my question about champions is, I would love, and we plant the seed with every nursing school student class we talk to, consider running for office. We'd love to have a nurse in the Capitol because, if you have a medical bill, they look to the doctors in the Capitol to say, how would you vote for this? Or how do you view this bill? Absolutely. We would love to have a nurse or nurses in the Capitol, state Capitol, so they can be that resource to their coworkers in the legislature. How do you identify legislative champions in Congress, and how can we at the state level help to identify more of those and nurture them and bring them along?
Yeah, so I want to just back up and say one comment about the importance of nurses' voices. And I will say, because they are relying on whoever happens to be elected and is in the healthcare profession, nurse or otherwise, keep in mind that all of these individuals have other professions. So your voice is really important. A very small percentage, even in most states, of anybody from the health profession. They may be in agriculture, they could be in insurance. So their lens is very different. So everyone needs to reach out, even if they don't run for office. I will say that most nurses are afraid to run for office because they don't trust that they have the skills to deliver. And it's really, the hardest part is asking for help. You got to ask for help. You got to set up a group, establish a committee or people to work with you and raise money. Those are the hard things, but to actually do the job, it's not difficult, and you shouldn't be fearful of it. There was actually a nurse campaign school that was supposed to launch last year, but COVID put it aside. It's Yale's School of Nursing. So, I'm not, there's other opportunities. You don't have to do a nurse focused. I mean, you can do a campaign school to gain some comfort and work forward. But and I wanted to say also that, and this is I'm a little bit jaded. Don't assume because someone is a nurse in a policymaking body that they are a great advocate for nursing. We do have in some states where we've witnessed we have nurses in the state house, and they are not necessarily always having the best interests of nurses going forward. And it's rare, but it does happen. So I don't want you to assume that. But with Congress, it's, again, we really, every time some newly elected individuals are elected, we actually reach out to them and have meetings with them to talk to them, right? We only have 3 members of Congress right now who are nurses. One of them we are actually able to endorse, got elected. So we've got that person's ear all the time. But we work with all leadership. We work with the leadership in the committees of jurisdiction in particular, targeting them because we only have 2 full-time lobbyists for 525 members of Congress, not unlike ANA California. It is impossible for Roxanne to reach out to every member of the State House, but you're strategic, right? You focus on the committees of jurisdiction, and then you rely heavily on your constituents when you send out messages to them for them to reach out to their elected officials. And then again, getting to know the new members so they understand. So I hope that answers it. Nurses are important, and we want more nurses to run because you do have the skills. All the skills you use in nursing, same skills you apply to policymaking. Same thing.
You know who's a huge champion of nursing?
I was going to say
Assemblyman Wood.
I was going to say that whenever it is that, when we run, we're going to be sitting in California State Legislature with Assemblyman Wood, who is the chair of Assembly Health Committee. We're welcoming him now. Janet, thank you so much.
Thank you and welcome. And thank you for your support.
Wasn't that a good transition?
That was a great transition. Oh my God.
I think you're muted though.
I am not.
There you are. Okay. No. I wanted to hear you laugh.
Okay.
So can I go ahead, Marquetta?
Yes, please.
Okay. So we are honored and pleased to have Assemblyman Wood join us. He started his career in public service in 2006 in the Healdsburg City Council. He joined the Assembly in 2014, representing the North Coast, Mendocino, Sonoma, Humboldt, and much more than that. The districts are huge. He's passionate about expanding access to medical, dental, and mental health care. He's been particularly involved with his other full-time career of forensic dentistry. He's established a mass disaster identification team, and were you one of 2 or the only one that was involved in trying to identify victims of the Paradise Fire?
I had a couple of people helping me, but it was mostly me.
Yeah, it's very, very unique and special skill set, and thank you for that as well. The door is always open to ANAC. We're fortunate to have him in the legislature, in particular as chair of a very important health committee, which nurses obviously are very aware of and pay a great deal of attention to. And I don't want to take too much more time, so we can hear from you as long as possible. So thank you for joining us.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much. And I apologize, my background is blurred. I had it set somewhere and I just put it on. And so I'm in my office. There's some cool things back here, but they're all blurred, so you won't be able to see them. So my apologies. But good morning. Thank you so much for the invitation to talk with you this morning. I just want to say thank you to you as nurses in general. This has been the year and the year and a half that I don't know that we'll ever top this one, and the incredibly difficult circumstances under which you have been working, the challenges you faced on a day-to-day basis, and the challenges you're going to continue to face. And I just want to say thank you. You're so appreciated and probably not complimented enough. And so please know that I appreciate everything you do and wish you nothing but health and happiness and success going forward here as we see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I know that's a phrase that gets used a lot, but I can tell you, having just gotten my vaccine, I was finally eligible a week ago or a couple weeks ago and was able to get a vaccine, and it's a really good feeling. So and it is important. And I heard somebody, I don't know who that was before me, but talking about communicating with nurses and getting their input. And yeah, we'd love to have nurse in the legislature, you guys. I mean, come on, somebody out there has you all have the skill set. If a dentist can do it, a nurse can do it better, probably. So so come and join us. But just and the importance of what you do in these lobby days and your experience in the Capitol. With being important stakeholders, you have a perspective that I think is really important, and it needs to be heard. And so, no place better than being a member of the legislature. So, as a dentist, I practiced in a small town and got interested in public health policy and got elected to my city council and worked with the Dental Association on public policy and really got interested in possibly someday running for the legislature with a lobby day, and went to lobby days and just found that I could take the same set of skills I use to communicate with my patients on a daily basis and communicate that to legislators. And that's what you can do as nurses. And you're trusted, you're valued, you're articulate, and you have a great message. And so I think there is a huge value there. So and for me, I didn't leave my small town practice to just come and sit around and not do much. It's about access, affordability, and quality care for people. And that's what I've been focused on my entire time in the legislature. And workforce is a challenge. We know my experience of sitting on the California Healthcare Foundation's Workforce Commission a few years back. We are really challenged across the board with healthcare workforce. And so that's nursing, that's nurse practitioners, that's mental health providers, CNAs, you name it. And we're really headed towards huge challenges if we don't continue to build our workforce. We had a bill last year, nurse practitioners being able to provide primary care under the proper circumstances. Once again, that was a response to the Workforce Commission study that we did. And so, for me, especially representing small communities, anything we can do to expand our workforce is most important. So you can't, the other part for me is you can't make healthcare for everyone unless we make it affordable for people. And that is a huge challenge that we're facing right now. I've taken on drug companies, health plans, providers, you name it. I've tackled those variety of different entities. And if anybody's a fan of Freakonomics, there was a great piece that was, there's a podcast called Freakonomics, and there's a piece on there about dialysis companies. And I know that because I was featured in that, and it just came out last week. And you want to talk about how large entities can manipulate the market and affect affordability. Listen to that podcast, and if you don't come away frustrated, you didn't listen to all of it. If you came away frustrated, then know that we did something in California to try to put a stop to some of those practices. So, but this year I'm working on. We introduced a package of bills, and we've never done this before, where we've had 3 sequential bills, and people have said, what's the most important bill of those 3 that you introduced? And I said, well, I think the fact that we introduced them in sequence ought to tell you something. They're all really important. The first one is AB 1130, and that is a bill to create the Office of Healthcare Affordability. It would be unique. There are other states that have done something similar, but this would be unique in that it actually has targets that are enforceable with penalties if you don't reach the targets. And it goes across the healthcare system to try to ensure that we can get a handle on the rising costs of healthcare. At one point in the not too distant past, healthcare was rising at twice the rate of inflation, and that's simply not sustainable. And so we want to build this office to be able to look at this and come up with some goals. And we know that based on some studies out there that 20 to 25% of the money spent in healthcare is waste and duplication. So if we can't use an Office of Healthcare Affordability to identify some things and reduce even 10%, half of that, then we're not trying very hard. And so when people want to fight against me and say, well, we can't possibly do it, and I point to the fact that there's so much waste, we absolutely can. So the second bill is the creation of a statewide health information exchange. That's AB 1131. And the idea there is that, our patients should, in hospitals should be able to, their information should be at the doctor's fingertips, regardless of where you are. And it isn't that way now. It is if you're within a certain system, but it isn't globally. So if I ended up in Southern California and was ill, my doctor, whoever I'm seeing there, wouldn't be able to access my health insurance. And this is 2021. This is crazy. In some healthcare systems, even if I was in the same general region, they're still communicating with fax machines and telephones in 2021. So this is crazy, and it's time that we unify our health information so that once again, it'll reduce waste, it'll increase quality, and it'll hopefully get that information at people's fingertips in a timely way, so they get the best and most appropriate treatment at the time. And the third bill, which we have just made into a 2-year bill, we're going to work on that a little bit longer, is around consolidation in healthcare. Throughout healthcare, we're seeing massive consolidation, and it's not always in the interest of the consumer, and it's not always in the interest of the people that are providing healthcare. It's often in the interests of hedge funds and large corporations, but it isn't focused in the way I think it should be. And so we want to have some scrutiny over that, and so we will be working on that through the fall, and then that bill will move again in January. So I'm also a co-author of Susan Eggman, Senator Eggman's bill on the Compassion and Choices bill. I worked with her when she had the bill in 2016, I believe, and we think we need to. That shouldn't be a pilot. We need to extend this and make this a reality for everyone. And I'm honored to support her in that, very much so. And I just want to close with, and I know you have a big day here, but the importance of stakeholders and the valuable input you bring to us. A lot of my colleagues don't have the background in healthcare other than maybe being a patient somewhere. And so it's really critical that you be the trusted messengers that you are and bring the information to them so that we can actually get these things done. People listen closely to healthcare providers, and they will listen to you. And I would say too that one of the best ways to engage with your local or your electeds is to try to do it in the fall or during the recess, when you can actually do it when they're in their districts. Get them to a tour of where you work, whether it's a hospital or a clinic or a surgery center, skilled nursing facility, whatever. Get them out into a tour. We love to get out. We don't want to just sit in our office and do meetings all day. We love to get out, and then you have them as a captive for a while, and you can give them your perspective on things and build that relationship so that when they have a question about nursing, they go to the person who becomes that key contact. And I think it's a really great way to do it. That's how we did it in dentistry. I know a lot of organizations do that, but you guys are trusted messengers. Be that trusted messenger to that legislator, and you will see great dividends come from that. So with that, I'll close. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to answer questions. But I'm at your mercy.
I think someone snuck my notes to you. A lot of what I said is that's our mantra is, get to know your elected officials, become the resource for them on all things nursing. I love the idea of having your senator or assembly member tour wherever they're working. I think that's an excellent suggestion, and we'll add that to our remarks for every other speech going forward. I'd like to say, first of all, we're very disappointed that we're not in the Capitol. Usually we're in 4202 or 4203. But that said, there is a seating capacity problem that goes with that. And Marquetta, we have more than 600 people on this Zoom right now, all because you're joining us.
Yeah, yes. I doubt
that. But beneath all that, I have a question, and you sort of alluded to it, is, and we've asked a number of members this, is like, how do we help get nurses to find their voice in the public policy arena? Because they can be so powerful. It can be so intimidating. We try to break down the walls that would prevent them from trying to communicate with people like you. Do you have any advice for them on how they can dip their toe in that water and, become a resource to their elected officials?
Another way too is, I started getting involved in public policy at my state level with the organization, the California Dental Association. That became important for me to understand the lingo, so to speak, and then being involved locally as a city council member. There are huge opportunities we're always looking for good qualified people to run for public office at the local level. And so as a city council member, a school board member, although I would say school board is probably the hardest thing in the world. So, go for that. But certainly as a city council member, their nurses poll really high. Nurses and firefighters, you guys are always like this. And take advantage of that. I mean, you've earned it, for crying out loud. You have earned it. There is a reason you have that reputation and you have that credibility. Take it and run with it, and be that reason voice, and run locally. And from there, if you can run locally, you build relationships with all your neighboring cities, with your boards of supervisors, and you kind of create a little bit of a snowball effect that way. But to go just from a practicing nurse to the legislature, pretty tough. It can be done. It has been done, but it's pretty tough. My pathway was very methodical over time. And at the end of the day, when I first ran for a local office, I wasn't sure I would ever run beyond that. I really didn't. And it was just the right timing came along, and the right support. And we here I am. So 7 years later. So and I love what I do.
Yep, love what you do, and you'll never work a day in your life.
No, that's true. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Me too. I know I asked Roxanne to let you go, but I just wanted to mention that regarding the SB 380, which is the end of life option, we also worked with back then Assembly Member Eggman and now Senator Eggman. We're also supporting this. We were part of the campaign because we believe that NEA Code of Ethics clearly states that we have to provide our patients with all the necessary information so they can make the best decisions for their lives. So we so appreciate your help and your support. Mm-hmm. And I will let Roxanne, thank you. I will let Roxanne to close it.
Well, so thank you so much for always having such an open door policy for us. And you've already been more generous with your time than we'd ask. So we appreciate it. You probably have all kinds of other Zoom and WOA and Teams people pulling at you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I hope your lobby day is great, and feel free to reach out to us at any time. And if you end up with a candidate who runs for the legislature, make sure they come knocking on my door. I want to be.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Okay.
You too.
Bye.
All right, so wasn't this exciting? So thank you so much, Assemblyman Wood, Chair of Assembly Health Committee. He's always very kind. He always comes to our lobby days and he interacts with our participants. And so we're very grateful for his time. And now another fantastic, exciting speaker, which is BJ Bartleson. BJ is the Vice President of Nursing Services and she works for the California Hospital Association. BJ is obviously a nurse herself and a fantastic supporter of ANAC and a massive nursing advocate. So we are very happy to have BJ. BJ, welcome.
Thank you so much, Marquetta, and so good to be with you all. But I have to tell you, it's hard when I can't see all of you and when we're not in 4202 and we're just enjoying being nurses and advocating. I need to share my screen, Marquetta, but it says I am disabled for participant screen sharing.
Oh, good God. So, Jared, are you listening? Can you please? Oh, now, there you go. You're co-host now.
All right, let's get us up here then. So stand by. Make sure I get this right. How about now? Is that working?
Perfect.
Okay, very good. And let me get over here and make sure I'm moving things around okay. Just have a little patience with me. Are you seeing now? Okay, well, first of all, thank you all so much for having me again. It's such a treat. Like I say, the hard part is really not being able to see you. So I'm going to do the best I can without seeing all your smiling faces. And from all of us at the California Hospital Association, just want to give you a big shout out for you being coronavirus heroes, large, small, in between, all of the support. We have just seen amazing things at the Hospital Association, and we have all kinds of educational activities, everything you can imagine, innovations, opportunities where we were really able to go across the state and see all of the good things happening. So I just wanted to make a special thank you to you again for what you've done over the year and what you'll continue to do. You know, if we think back on it, nursing, emergency care really is in our DNA. If you think about all the places that nurses have been, remember back to Ebola, we had all kinds of things going on, Hurricane Katrina, all kinds of disaster triage and war. So it's not new to us, but if you think about the different disasters in our nursing history, they're different, right? We have never really had a disaster this long, this unintended relative to COVID. It's really brought out a whole new set of circumstances for us to learn about and to advocate. And here again, long history of supporting disaster relief, thousands of people that nurses have worked with across the world, yellow fever epidemic in Jacksonville, Florida, Clara Barton, you'll remember some of these in your history, Johnston flood and the Galveston hurricane, flu pandemic, on and on and on. We've always been there. We will always be there. And what we need to do now is really learn and advocate from what's happened. And Johnson & Johnson, you all know, has been a big fan, a big supporter and advocate of nursing, really put together an advocating and innovating series for nurses. And I didn't put the website on here, but I'm sure you can go Google it. But anyway, they showcased RNs who pioneered innovative COVID-19 solutions, from inventing, for instance, a medical grade protective mask to forming interdisciplinary prone teams. Remember proning? I'm sure we're still doing a little bit of that. Developing a virtual rounding tool to create color-coded signs to improve communication, and then add to the innovations work. We think about all the telecommunication that's been done through COVID and how much now all of that technology is being used and how nursing has been a part of that. So we have learned so much. And I think now is the time that we need to advocate and innovate continuously as we work in the COVID aftermath to next steps. So I have to give a shout out to ANA and to Girard, who I think has done a lot of work with Marquetta. Your website, the ANA website, is a beautiful feature now about advocacy being ANA's core business, and how perfect. Again, as we come through COVID and we've learned so much about nursing and disaster, how do we put all that together in the future? And if you were to just canvass through the thousands, of ideas and bills in the legislature, many of them have to do with the COVID emergency. And so I just have to thank ANA, because this is such a perfect, well done, simple yet robust look at how do you become a nurse advocate and create change through legislation, regulation, and policy. And then very simplified, and now is kind of going to direct you to how you can advocate specifically. Again, I pulled this up because I was like, wow, this is awesome. Very simple, easy to follow. And as they start to build the Advocacy Institute, the Legislative Watch, and the nursing campaigns, you can learn and help as we go. So great shout out to ANA. And I think you will all learn this as we've learned along the way. Many of us older folks have learned this through the years. You'll be able to learn it in a couple of minutes and in a couple of months. So it's going to be a lot easier for you to advocate. And thanks to ANA for putting that together. So what I normally bring to you, what Marquetta asked me to bring back, was just a really kind of cliff notes on Advocacy Day, and the who, what, where, why, and when, and how you can kind of do this simply, no matter whether you're a novice or an expert. It's always good to review, right? So again, when you go to advocate at any point, you have to think about what hat you're wearing and who do you represent. What is the advocacy or the policy that you're advocating for? Where are you advocating? Why are you advocating? And then how will you come up with a compelling message to influence and inspire? So those are some of the things. And remember, Assemblyman Wood, he really highlighted our gig, our motto about being the most trusted professional. And we need to take advantage of that really as our compelling message. So I just wanted to underline that. So let's again go to what hat are you wearing and who are you advocating for? Why does this make a difference? Well, if you think about being a nurse, first and foremost, personally, you're a nurse, but you also may be a nurse representing your employer. So you may be a nurse in a hospital representing your employer. You may be a nurse today at ANA representing the American Nurses Association, California. You may be a nurse in your home, and you may be representing yourself as a nurse. So your perspective, or who you are at the time you're advocating, is extremely important. You may differ. For instance, you may have a difference of opinion with ANAC. You may have a difference of opinion with your employer. So you have to kind of make sure you understand what hat you have on, who you're advocating for. But today we're going to say you're advocating for American Nurses Associations of California, and you are champions of change. Again, kind of a compelling little motto to help us all think about that. But if you're going to talk on behalf of ANA and be a champion of change, you need to kind of make sure that your guiding principles align with theirs, because sometimes we all differ a bit. So again, some more kind of terms. Your elite RNs making it different. Most importantly, and I think Assemblymember Wood brought this up too, is you are content experts. When I talk to many of you, work with you across the state and the country, for some reasons, nurses don't see themselves as experts. And I want you to think about yourself as an expert. Even if you're a novice nurse, you've just graduated, you've got expertise that others don't have, particularly legislators. You have something that's very important. So I want you to put a content expert hat on in whatever stage of nursing you are. And again, just to review, as we sit all here with ANAC as champions of change, what's our vision? What's our mission? Are we kind of in that same space, shaping nursing profession and healthcare today? Well, think about COVID and all of the changes with healthcare and technology, and how we need to advocate moving forward on how to keep some of those things moving and how to keep nursing practice transforming so that we're taking care of patients where they need to be cared for. Because what did we learn during COVID? Most certainly was a lot of care can be provided at home, can be provided out of the hospital. So what does that mean for nursing practice? And again, the mission of ANAC, enhance the health and well-being of Californians and advance our profession. And again, one of the little mottos I try to throw in, also reinforced with Assemblymember Wood, I think nursing is California's best kept secret. We are the most trusted professional. We know how to take care of people at any point in time. We can really be helpful to the legislators and to the California citizens to move us forward. All right, so what is advocacy? Well, advocacy encompasses a wide range of activities that influence decision makers, pretty obvious. And what does it consist of? Again, obvious things: public education, capacity building, relationships, all of these things, voting. And I know most nurses are huge, busy people, right? You've got work, you've got families, many of you are still going to school. So you're like saying, how in the world can I advocate? But just you being here today is advocacy. So give yourself a pat on the back. And if it's the only thing you can do this month to advocate, if it's the only thing you can do this year, it's perfect. And I go back to ANAC's website, because you being able to tap into there for 5 or 10 minutes when baby's asleep or you happen to have 10 minutes on your break at work, you can sift through some of that work and educate yourself on what are some of the things that I can do to advocate. Can I write a letter to my representatives? Can I, it's a lot easier now. You can write it online, you can zip it online. What are some of those things that you can do to fit into your schedules to advocate? And as Assemblymember Wood said, knowing your legislators, knowing your policymakers, and visiting them in your districts are really, really important. Also, many organizations such as NEA-BC have political action committees. So anything you can do to dip your toe in the water, and kind of keep moving as you graduate into other advocacy activities. So you don't have to do everything, and you don't have to do it all at once. You can kind of gradually do it as you go. So what policies are you advocating for? And again, this is very important that you do some think time about what is policy. And another good thing with nurses is we know policies, right? Policies rule our world. If most of us are working in a hospital or with an employer, we are working with policies and guidelines and processes every day. And many of you are contributing and making them better. And that's really essentially what statutes or law or legislation and regulations are all about. And so statutes are really broad central policies, and then regulations are the specific processes and guidelines that go with those statutes and happen later. And you as nurses can advocate and be part of all of that. The big pizzazz stuff happens around legislation and bills or the statute changes. But in the background, after those statutes are passed or the legislation is passed, there's regulatory work which goes on, which takes a lot of public comment, and nurses can be very involved in regulations as well. So again, thinking through policies and what's important or how to write policies or think about them, very important for you as you advocate. You got to be centered on sort of the pros and cons. Again, highest quality nursing care at the right place at the right time. Are there statutory changes that are needed to our Nurse Practice Acts? And I always go back to, do you know where your Nurse Practice Acts are? Do you know what policies that we have now in statute that you follow every day? Is there legislation affecting us negatively? Is there legislation now being proposed that is going to affect us positively? In order to guesstimate that, you really you need to know what your statute says now. So what do your statutes say in the Nursing Practice Act now? Good thing to kind of review and know. So again, what are those policies that guide your decision making? Important for you to think about. So let's say, you're looking for policies. Maybe you're a novice nurse advocate and you want to know, what are all the bills in the legislature this year that have to do with nursing? Well, leginfo.legislature.ca.gov is a beautiful website where you can find out a lot of things, a lot of active issues going on in the legislation. So for instance, ANA is following AB 285. Sorry, the A came off of that. But anyway, if you were to text search on that website, you could come up with all of the bills that have RN listed. And there's 10 pages of bills. So very interesting. You would be able to see all the bills. You'd be able to go through them and kind of gauge or guess, well, do these bills affect me? Do they affect our Nurse Practice Acts? Is it something that we need to work on? So that's a great little site for you to learn from relative to what bills are in the legislature this year that have anything to do with nursing and might have anything to do with what I'm concerned about. So why is it important that you advocate as an RN? Well, because you are an RN. Remember, you're a content expert wherever you start. Even though you are a novice nurse, you have expertise any place you are in your RN trajectory. So you have to think that. We have to be confident and think positively. Obviously, if you don't have an answer, if you don't know, they're like the rest of us, you have to say, I don't know, but we'll find out. You're part of the RN family. That's huge in California, right? There's over 400,000 of us. Think how powerful that is. What you do makes a difference in healthcare, better costs, lower costs, improved access. Listen to Assemblymember Wood. Many of his bills have to do with healthcare affordability. How do we improve information exchange and access, which, you know, this drives us all crazy in a hospital when we can't have information fast enough. It's not connected. We still have things on paper. He's trying to fix some of those big, broad things that drive us all nuts. So again, you are in the zenith of it, and those kind of examples help. So advocating for improved health information exchange is a perfect way for you to get involved in some of these processes of advocation. You are RN champions of change, and you have to think that way because you are, and you have so many, as nurses, we are always innovating, we're always advocating, and political advocacy is the same thing. It's just usually done on a wider perspective. So let's go back to Assemblymember Wood and him saying, you know, the best thing for you to do is meet with your representatives and your legislators in the fall when they have time to meet you in their districts. So how would you find out who that is? Again, a website up here for you. It's very important. And the fall time is good because they're not in the zenith of a million bills like what's happening right now as bills are moving through their first committees and going to the second committee. Remember, we're in the first year of 2 years. We are, you know, starting to rev our engines, and as bills start moving to second committees, it gets very heated, right? Because then they're going to have to go to the next house. But anyway, it's important that you try to hit the legislators or your representatives when they're not in the heat of the moment. They think they can really spend some time with you and learn about your nursing intelligence. They need it. They really need to understand what you do and how your work can affect their policy. There's district and state offices and staffers. Those people are really always looking for your expertise because, again, many of them aren't advocates or knowledgeable about healthcare. They want to know you. They want to know who you are and who you're representing. And then make sure you let them know that you're a constituent of that representative's districts because that makes a big difference relative to them, you know, taking the time out to meet with you. So again, how do you engage advocacy-wise? Certainly there's many ways to do that. In-person visits are wonderful. It's so hard this year because we're having to do all of this by Zoom, but really the face-to-face makes things better. But as we're learning through COVID and disaster, we're having to really rely on our resources and our internal strengths to make things work the best we can, and think about patients who can't come to the hospital. And now we're going to telehealth and tele-ER them. And so we're going to make all of this work the best we can. But anyway, in-person visits, letters, emails, again, most pervasive if you can do one-on-one. Your content expertise bears more weight than a lobbyist, for instance, because you have the information that so many don't. And then how do you have that compelling message to make your visit stand out? Now, one of the things I always try to do is know the legislator before you go visit them. And that's sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not, depends on how long the legislator's been in office. Website, they all have their own websites. They have history posted there, usually have stories. What committees do the legislators sit on? What do they believe in? What are their policies? What's their voting record? And again, a lot of this is on their website. If we were able to be walking around the Capitol right now, if you get in between some of the committee hearings, you'll hear a lot about the legislators and what stories they bring and how others perceive them. So word of mouth really has a big play in this, but it's hard to kind of manipulate that now while we're also Zooming and not able to do that one-on-one. And then again, all of the legislators have staffers who cover their bills, and those staffers have specific expertise. And if they connect with you and they find out you have specific expertise they need, you will become their best friend. So always ask for the staffer on a bill. They might become your best friends forever, particularly if you can provide them some important information. Real simple. And again, another thing to put on your to-do list, if you're not feeling comfortable with the California state government and assembly and Senate, what does all this mean? Go give yourself 5-10 minutes on the ca.gov.government website, learn a little bit about what happens. Now, I always like to remind nurses, because again, we are so focused on optimism and good things, and oftentimes we forget about the politics. So I have two buckets, and that's the policy, or the process, how it's supposed to work. The other bucket is the politics. And the politics is all about negotiation, sentiment from one side or the other. Let me give you an example with Assemblymember Wood today. So he talked about 3 bills that he's working on, and one of them has to do with consolidation of hospitals. And so if you think about, there's always 2 sides to the story, and oftentimes opposition and support is a yes or no, or it's, one side of the story, the other side of the story. The key with politics is trying to find the middle road, or trying to find it and both. And nurses are great at this. How do we not do yes or no, but how do we do and both? And that's the politics. That's the sort of, if I give you this, will you give me that? Assemblymember Wood, hospitals consolidate because we see it's cost effective. And you heard him say today, it's a hedge fund issue, and it's all about money making. So somewhere in between, we're going to negotiate, and through politics, which I just call negotiation and sort of wiggling around with things, we're going to have to find an answer that works for everybody. So the politics get a little opaque, cloudy, murky, and they're often sometimes biased. But as nurses who are patient advocates and nurses who can be policy advocates, you can help negotiate the politics. So there's always sort of a backstory, and you have to kind of take that into consideration. All right, another little helpful hint, how will you follow your bill? Marquetta told me you're following AB 285, which is the school nurse consultant position. I must say, I don't know too much about the bill, but again, that wonderful website, leginfo.legislature.ca, you'd be able to follow your bill. There's a little place on there you can put your email in it. They'll send you updates on what's happening to the bill, what committee it's gone through, did it pass, was it amended? So, just for fun and to learn, you got to plug that in there and follow the bill as it goes. Roxanne and Marquetta are going to give you some updates, I'm sure, on YouTube as we go through. I'm sure they're going to post them on the website, but you can also have that be on that listserv and get the information for any bill you want to follow. There may be another bill that ANAC isn't working on and you want to follow it. So that's a real key for you to help yourself learn. On that website, there's bill search, there's tabs for votes, analysis. Oh, the analysis, and again, Roxanne would tell you this, oftentimes I'll read a bill and it's Greek. I don't get it, I don't understand it. And I'm thinking, what the heck? Every bill has what's called an analysis when it goes to a committee, and the committees have staffers, and those staffers are experts in analyzing a bill and writing everything they know as neutrally as they can with the information they have. So every time the bill is set for a committee, there's an analysis, and it's located on that leg.ca.gov website. And the analysis can really help you get through the bill. I call it Greek, but it can really help inform you about things you might not be picking up from the bill itself. The other thing I want to share with you, and it has to do with the bill structure. Bills are structured in a way that it's not just about their content, but it's also about what code of statute that the bill sits in and what code of statute it's going to be put in. So there's a lot of structure to bills that might not seem obvious when you just read them. So again, I think that's the best place for you to go to follow bills. A couple other things just to keep on your mind. Scope of practice is always confusing in the legislature. think about the confusion of what nurses do. And I know you hear me talk about this a lot, but I want to reemphasize what you do as a nurse and what it is that's different from any other healthcare provider is very important. And the legislators need to understand that you as an RN, you diagnose and treat a human's response to health and illness. It is so important because it differentiates you from a physician in particular and from every other provider. It's very confusing at the legislature and the Capitol. It's confusing in the whole world. But just want to reiterate to you that scope of practice is important. And if you can help the staffers and the legislators just with that, it would be very, very important. And as AB 890, yay, and nurse practitioner independence moved last year, and we start to unfold all those regulations for that bill. This again will come up in bills as we move forward. So very important to understand what you do, where it is in the Nurse Practice Act, and really understand that related to other professions. And again, what you do related to anyone else, very, very important. Very important to know your Nurse Practice Acts, because all of these bills could affect it or not. Why is it important we have you? This is my call to action to you. The public and the policymakers need nursing intelligence currency, I'll call it. All of the things that you do, the finance, the economics, the policy and advocacy, all the ways to make a difference. How do we distill what we do into a compelling message? Again, come up with some, little key compelling messages. How do we align ourselves across the state? I think this was, as we had COVID, all of the bad things of COVID, we had AB 890 pass. Independence for nurse practitioners and certified nurse midwives. Wow, that was huge. So again, it's an alignment that we can keep moving and building off of, and can continue our sort of credibility as we go. So I'm coming to the end. We want you. We need you. ANAC, I know, need you. I need you at the Hospital Association. Really appreciate being with you all today. And I hope next year we're in 4202, looking at each other and being together. And just one more little tidbit, Marquetta and Roxanne, and that is make sure you all follow the BRN sunset activity. And maybe Marquetta and Roxanne and I can do a little YouTube blip for your website about it, so we can help educate all of ANAC on the activity going on now with the BRN, how it affects us moving forward. Again, we want you. We want you to be part of advocacy. And thank you again for all you do. And thanks, Marquetta, for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you, BJ, so much. We really appreciate you being a nursing champion, and you always championing ANAC and championing our causes and supporting us and inviting us to be part of coalition projects and panel discussions and collaborations, because this is the only way how we together will change policy and advance the nursing profession. And thank you so much for the idea of doing, little panel discussion or little recording on the BRN sunset, because as many of you know, we shared it with you that on March 12th, there was the first hearing of the BRN sunset. That was, I think, 3 hours. And then the talk was that there will be a second hearing, but it was supposed to be at the end of April, but we just learned that it was postponed. So whenever it is that it will be coming up, we will update you. And BJ, Roxanne, and I, and our board members, we will definitely work on some educational event regarding the BRN sunset and how it is so important. I think, thank you, BJ. Your presentation is always fantastic, and you always cover all the important things from nursing advocacy. And so we are very grateful for your time. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Roxanne, do you have last imparting comments?
How you get me, Marquetta. I was just going to say, we are so much stronger together, and BJ is an incredible partner in this. And you're going to hear from Lydia Bourne, who is also, I think, part of the Charlie's Five Angels. And so Thank you so much for all of your support and being part of the team.
You bet. Good luck, everyone. Have a great day.
Yay. And now, okay, one quick announcement. We just heard from Assemblyman Arambula that emergency crept up and he is unable to join us. He sends his apologies. And, this is what happens in politics. This is what happens in nursing and in medicine. We all understand how it goes. So we are sending our best wishes to Assemblyman Arambula, and we thank him for considering us, and we look forward to welcome him in during our next event. And now, I think, technological issues aside, we do have a message from Mayor Beth Haney.
Hi, everyone. My name is Beth Haney, and I'm a nurse practitioner and also city councilwoman for the city of Yorba Linda. And I served as mayor in 2020. And 2020, as we all know, was a very tumultuous year, difficult for everyone, especially us nurses who were overworked and overburdened with not just our own lives, but also taking care of the populations that we serve. And I couldn't be more thrilled that you are here for Lobby Day and speaking with your legislators at the state level, but also please keep in mind that city and county and regional elected officials are also very important as far as making sure that nurses' voices are heard. The local ordinances from your city and county officials, they affect you more in your own neighborhoods and in your own homes than perhaps the laws that are passed by Congress or even your state legislature. So please stay involved or get involved with your city officials. You can go to City Hall, attend meetings either virtually or, if allowed, in person, and just get engaged with your local elected officials. Nurses' voices need to be heard at all levels of government: local, county, district, state, and federally. So please get involved with your local politicians, and then also have a great time today speaking with your state legislators. We definitely need to have nurses' voices heard at the state level, and I hope you guys all have fun. It's great, and it is such an honor to be a nurse, especially in this day and age. So I congratulate all of you for attending Lobby Day, and have a wonderful time.
I am muted again. That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Beth. Beth is not only a nurse practitioner and an elected official, but last year she was to meet you actually in person during our Lobby Day or then during our conference. But then COVID hit us, and nothing was happening. So this year we are so happy that we were able to get her video. She is one of the very few nurses actually elected in an office in California. And as Assemblyman Wood said, this is something we need to do. And before we welcome our next speaker, I just wanted to share with you that 4 or 5 years ago, when I was with Roxanne, we went to one of my first events, and it was an event hosted by our coalition partners, CAP, right? California Allied for Patient Protection, with the Lisa Mas, the executive director. And there was back then Assemblywoman Toni Atkins. And so she became the speaker, right? Speaker of Assembly, Roxanne, and now she is a Senator Atkins. The reason I'm bringing her up is that when somebody asked her what was her political journey to California State Assembly, and she said that that people had to ask her a minimum of 5 times to run for a local office back then. I think she was coming from Minnesota. And so she was saying that when people ask her to run for an office, her immediate answer was, oh, no, that's not for me. I don't have, no. Second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time. And so she said that around 6 times, she started to really take it seriously. And she started to thinking about, maybe that's not a bad idea. And studies show over and over that when women are asked to run for an office, our immediate answer is no. And, me being the role model or the bad role model April when I was asked in 2014 to run for an office in the European Parliament from Czech Republic. I was like, oh my God, no, I don't have the education. I am not an expert. Oh my God, what am I going to be doing? The moment I said the last sentence, I thought, oh my God, what am I doing? I have the education. I am the expert. I have masters. I have bachelor's in politics. I've been in politics for 25 years. And yet my first reaction was, oh my God, no way, I am not running. So I don't do that anymore. It's just to show you that we all go through these learned processes, and we just have to go against the grain and really put ourselves out there and start doing public speaking and ask questions and connect with our legislators. I've been receiving a lot of texts and emails from you, from all of you watching us. And so one of those things are that I hear quite often that you are not as strong in public speaking. I mean, look at me, what I'm doing today. But I am trying, and I'm trying to speak in a slower tone of voice and lower tone of voice. Again, I had to learn that. And so look at my progress. If I can do it, and if dentist, Assemblyman Wood, if he can do it, nurses can probably do it better. I'm telling you, that's going to be my sentence from now on. So I just wanted to share that with you, that it's a journey and we are only together. And if we work together, we are much stronger. And with that, I would like to welcome our next speaker, Lydia Bourne. Lydia was kind enough to spend her time with us. She attended our lobby days in the past, and the evaluation on her speech was absolutely fantastic. We are so happy and pleased to welcome Lydia Bourne. Welcome, Lydia.
Thank you. Can everybody see me? I have a little
Yes, we can.
difficulty.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay.
Take
You got
it
dressed
away.
up for us.
Take it away.
Before I get started, let me share just a little bit of information. We've been talking about school nurses as potential legislators. The last RN that I am aware of that was in the California legislature was Helen Thompson. And I don't know, Roxanne, if you remember her. I don't think, Marquetta, you were around, but some of the audience who have been around for a while may recall her. She was a psych, her background was in psychiatry, and actually she's married to a psychiatrist. And she was instrumental in passing some of the more, I don't know, key mental health bills. But she started in 1996 and ended in 2002. So that is the last time.
Wow.
Yes, we have had a school nurse. I think many people will say Karen Bass was a nurse. She was not. She's a physician's assistant. And so in terms of nursing, it's been, what is that, almost 20 years since we've had someone that, at least that I am aware of. And as it turned out, she actually was my representative. I had worked with her prior to either she or I coming over to the legislature to do any work. So just a FYI on, why we need to have some school nurses. Now I need to figure out how to share my presentation. Let me see. Okay. Can anybody see that?
Nope.
Okay, so what do I do?
Somebody just texted me, Marquetta, your motto should be, Jared, can you help? So Jared, are you there? Can you help?
Yes, Lydia, let's first make sure that we have co-host ability for you. And then once you do, you will have a green button called share screen at the bottom of your Zoom video.
Okay, wait,
let
me get back to Zoom. Hold on. Share screen. Okay, click share screen.
Correct.
Yes, that should work.
Okay. Oh yeah, here we are. Hold to share. There, can you see it?
Terrific. We got you.
There you go. Excellent.
Great. So I'll be sharing some information with you all about school health nursing. Maybe there's some school nurses on there as a part of the larger group today. I certainly hope so. But and also maybe there are a number of public health nurses because as we'll get into the conversation, you'll find that school health nursing is a key component of public health. I, for example, primarily started out in public health and eventually got into school nursing. as an aside, my mother was also a school nurse, so it's kind of like the family business, if you will. But the criteria back east is different from here in California. And so thinking about public health nursing, when I came out, when I got reciprocity, not only did I get my license here in California, and at the time I was actually licensed where I went to school in Virginia, in DC, where I had come from, and then California. And then as the cost of the license went up, I kind of dropped the other two. So, but you had to get the PHN certification. And of course, we now know that some of the costs for some of these certifications has gone up, but that's a whole nother story. And I think there's some legislation out that will attempt to deal with that. So let me see if I can get to the next slide. Oh, okay. I want to thank all of you nurses who are on, particularly of those of you all who've been serving in acute care in the hospitals. I want to thank you all for all that you have done. Obviously, we could not have gotten as far as we are and have done as well as we have done if you had not been there providing services in the hospitals and in some of the clinics as well. So thank you for that. I also want to do a shout out to the school nurses. Some of you all may not be aware, but our school nurses have done a yeoman's job as well. We have been engaged with the local health departments in terms of doing testing. And now with the vaccine being out, we're doing lots and lots of vaccinations in the school. So we've been a part of the mass testing sites as well as the mass vaccination sites. So a shout out to any of the school nurses that are on. And if you were not aware of how we have been involved in COVID, then you are. I also will add the fact that when they started discussing when they were going to reopen the schools, the Department of Education joined with the Department of Public Health to put out a guidance document. And while it was very well done, the school nurses, we took a look at it and decided, this is great, but it's not specific to schools. And so we actually put out our own guidance document and shared it with the Department of Public Health as well as Department of Healthcare Services and Department of Education. We also, because we're aligned with our national organization, sent it off to them. And on a nationwide basis, we got really high marks for that program we had put together. And I'm willing to share that if anyone at the end of my talk wants to take a look at that. As I said, we provided information that's very specific to opening up the schools. And as we see, the schools are starting to open, some this week and some in the coming weeks, and others won't open up until much later. But at least for those schools where they have school nurses, we think they'll have some very adequate and appropriate and comprehensive guidance in terms of how to open up the schools and make sure that the staff and the students are safe. Okay, so what is school health nursing? Our national organization, as you can see, defines school nursing as a specialized practice of professional nursing that advances the well-being, academic success, and lifelong achievement of students. And then it goes on to give you some specifics. But let me give you a little bit of history of how school health nursing actually evolved. In the late 1880s, 70s, if you recall your history, that's when we had a big influx of immigrants coming into New York City, because that's primarily where they tended to come in at the time. And of course, we're talking about immigrant populations coming in, many of them not very well off, going into New York City was overwhelmed and wound up having a lot of poor housing areas, poor housing stock, folks coming in, no access to healthcare. And so we started to see lots and lots of issues. And of course, it's reflected by the children. In the late 1890s, New York City decided, we need to do something about this. And so they hired about 150 physicians to go into the schools. Oops, sorry. I hit my mouse. I have to keep my hands off of it. They went into the schools and started evaluating the students. And, doctors were sending notes home to parents and things like that. But many of the immigrants didn't speak English. And so children lose notes. Anybody who's ever dealt with children, and you know, some of you all, sometimes these notes don't come home from school. And so we started to see that. Lillian Wald, who you all may remember from your nursing history, was a nurse in New York City, and she essentially started the Henry Street Settlement. And that ought to ring a bell, I think, with some of you all. And in my mind, that was the beginning of social services and organizations that provided wraparound services. So she started to see what was going on, saw how the doctors were handling the kids. She actually moved into some of these ghetto areas and lived there and could see that there needed to be a lot more support. Needed to be a lot more support. So she hired Lena Perry, and she was the first nurse that was hired by New York City Education to be a school nurse. And she was on essentially a 30-day trial. It was so successful that within a couple of months, they had then hired additional 12 nurses. And after 6 months, the absentee rate had dropped by 90%. And so again, this to me is the beginning of public health nursing. And so that's why I say that school nursing is a component of public health. As it moved along in the 20s and the 30s, NEA, National Education Association, the AMA joined and developed a policy paper as well as a document outlining our school health services and what the expectations were or are for school nurses and how the school should deal with school health issues. NASN, which is the National Association of School Nurses, was created in 1963. And as I said, they have refined the whole concept of public health and how it relates to school health. And you know, the rest is history. Again, some of you all may be aware that in the 70s, the federal government put in place certain types of policies and legislative mandates that dealt with children with special needs. And so that's when we had IDEA, Individual Disability Education Act, when we got the ADA, the American Disabilities Act, and the Rehab Act, Section 504, all of which deal with children in schools and their ability to have what they call a free and appropriate education and access to all the services that every other child who does not have a law. Remember, we used to talk about mainstreaming children. That was when those federal mandates took effect. And so that's kind of how school health issues have grown over the years. Okay, so what do you need in order to become a school nurse? First of all, you need a bachelor's degree. And it does not necessarily have to be in nursing. We have many school nurses who started out in sociology, some in psychology, some of them even in the sciences, and decided for whatever reason, and everybody has a different story to tell, that they want to go into nursing. Because my mother was a nurse, I knew that with my going in, I would go into an undergraduate degree program. And so mine is a BSN. But as I said, as long as you have a bachelor's, it doesn't necessarily have to be in nursing. California, as you may be aware, and it's quite different from many other states, always requires additional education or additional training. And so we have what we call a credential in school nursing services. And it's issued by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. That's the same organization that credentials all the teachers that we have. Because remember, all the teachers have to have additional training, and they have a credential just as school nurses do. You are given 5 years to complete what they call a preliminary credential. And so if one of you all in the audience decided, you know, tomorrow that you wanted to go and become a school nurse, you would then apply to the commission, and there's certain criteria you'd have to meet. You'd have to have that undergraduate degree and some other issues that you'd have to meet, and they would give you what they call a preliminary credential, and they would give you 5 years to complete it. I'll talk a little bit more about the schools. At this point in time, we have 4 credentialed school nurse credential programs, and they are in the state system. So Fresno State, is it Fullerton? We have one private at Azusa Pacific and Fresno State. Those are the 4 existing programs. I will tell you at one point we had somewhere between 13 and 15. As the downturn in the economy changed, we lost many of those. So right now we have 4, although we have potentially 3 in the pipeline. And again, I'll be spending a little bit more information later on when we get to one of the bills about what's going on. All right, to clear your credential, you have to meet all the requirements. 2 years experience as a school nurse and completion of the approved credential program. So that means you have to go to one of those 4 programs that I mentioned. And of course, to finish up and you get a credential, I guess it's like a degree in the sense that it's, it's a piece of paper that shows that you have completed all the requirements in order for your credential. For those nurses who want to teach health, they have what they call a special authorization. And you can teach health in preschool, K-12, and to the adults. Again, additional requirements, additional training, additional education, in addition to that clear credential that you would get that says that you are a school nurse, if you want to specifically teach health in the schools. All right, so what are the policy issues that are a part of being a school nurse? All of the school nurse roles and responsibilities are codified in the Ed Code, and the section is 49426 if anybody wants to look it up. This was done sometime in the, I think, late 60s, early 70s is when they actually passed the legislation that essentially says you are a school nurse if, and then they list all the requirements. So anybody who calls themselves, essentially it was like a title in insurance. You cannot be a school nurse unless you can meet those roles and responsibilities that are codified in the Ed Code. All of the issues that relate to school health are primarily in the Ed Code. And so we mandate hearing and vision screening, for example. That is in the Ed Code. We also look at our kids in terms of scoliosis. That is in the Ed Code. The requirements for school entry that are immunizations, no schools, no shots, no school. All of that is, some of that is in the Ed Code, but also primarily in the Health and Safety Code. So that's where you can find all of the issues that relate to school health issues. As you can see, 47% of our schools have no school nurse, primarily because we do not have a mandate in the state of California for school nursing. There are approximately 22 states that do have a mandate, and there are also 15 states that essentially set up a ratio. And so California at this point is pretty far behind. We have attempted over the years, at least during the time that I have been with CSNO, to correct that. We generally can get the policy done, but when it comes to the cost, and there's always some hesitancy about making sure that we have sufficient funds in order to cover school nurses. Of the students we have here in California, 1.4 million of them have special needs or chronic conditions. And so the need for school health service is very clear. Anytime we have children, that number of children having those special needs. We have 6.2 million students, as you can see. And we have worked very closely with the American Academy of Pediatrics. And in 2016, they essentially put out a statement that says, based on their research, based on the needs they believe children have coming into schools, as a colleague of mine says, children do not leave all their healthcare needs at the doorstep when they walk into the schools. They bring those with them. And in order for them to be able to function in the school setting, they need to have these needs met. And the American Academy of Pediatrics agreed with that. And in 2016, put out a statement that says each school needs a school nurse. And of course, it makes perfect sense. And who can disagree with something like that? But when it comes down to funding these positions, we get into another conversation. NASN, which is the National School Nurses, puts out a needs-based ratio for how many school nurses should be in the various school districts across the state. And at the very least, it should be one school nurse for every 750. This would be regular education students. These would be students without special needs. And so essentially that's why they put out the needs-based. What's happening is the technology and the medical developments have been such that many children that in previous years may not have lived to get to school entry are now living, and we are able to care for them. But more importantly, we can care for them in the school setting. Again, because of the improvement of the technology and how we handle some of these children. In the state of California, approximately 2,700 school nurses for 10,000 schools in 1,100 school districts. And as I said, we have 6.2 million students. California is the second largest school district in the United States, with New York City being the largest. And so we have a great deal of responsibility in terms of trying to handle and make sure these children are safe, healthy, and able to learn. Okay, next one, let's talk about the school health bills that we're looking at for this legislative session. Okay, first one is, I think BJ mentioned it, probably because Marquetta mentioned it to her. This is one of the bills, and I want to do a shout out to ANAC for always supporting us in terms of some of the issues that we bring before the legislature. I can always give them a call, and they're right there for us. The school nurse consultant, AB 285, which is authored by Assemblyman Holden. Because we have this relationship with Department of Education, as I mentioned, pretty much all of our roles and responsibilities are codified in the Department of in the Ed Code. And of course, the Department of Education has oversight over and the regulatory, put out the regulations that implement the legislature that comes out of the Ed Code. So we have in previous years had what we call a school nurse consultant. And this is a person who is employed, as you can see, by either the Departments of Education or Public Health. In some states, they're actually done through Public Health. Here in California, we do it through the Department of Education. That person would promote and facilitate quality school nursing services, school health programs, and addressing the broad health needs of students. There is not a discipline that I am aware of that does not have someone at the state level who oversees what happens at the local level. And so that would be the position as well as the role and responsibility of the school nurse consultant. We have had in previous years a school nurse consultant. The last one retired in 2012. So it's been 8 years that we have been attempting to have this position filled. And because we only have nurses in 47% of our schools, a little bit more than that, we have unlicensed people providing school health services. And that alone would be enough to have someone with that background at the state level providing guidance, technical support to those local school districts in terms of how to handle some of the issues that occur around school health issues in the school. And so this person also, as we do, is the bridge between education and health. And so that is the purpose of 285. Most of our bills are double referred. This bill was heard in education and we were put on consent. What that means is there was no opposition to the bill. And so it just came out of Assembly Education with unanimous vote of yes. Now, it was also double referred to Assembly Health, but because we're still in the throes of COVID, we're still having a lot of issues at the Capitol. Instead of double referring this bill, they looked at, I think they said there was 100 and some bills coming out of Assembly and some other of the committees. Appropriations was essentially going to be overwhelmed. And so what they did is they went through and made the determination about which bills that were double referred did not have to go through the referral. I think they made the decision because we were on consent. It was unlikely that anybody in Assembly Health was going to have difficulty with the bill. We were automatically sent to appropriations. So now AB 285 is sitting in Assembly Appropriations. I've had conversations with the consultant, as I think BJ mentioned. It's always important to have conversations with the committee consultant about the bills that are coming through. In case there's any misunderstanding, you can share that with them, and they can share with you any concerns that they have. And so we had those conversations, and we're waiting to see. I think some of you all may be aware that anything over $150,000, which is the threshold, would go into what they call suspense. And so 285, because the cost of filling this position, which would be salary and benefits and maybe some administrative costs attached to it beyond the benefits, it's over that threshold of $150,000. And so at this point in time, until I find out differently, I'm assuming this bill will go into suspense. And of course, the hearings they have on suspense are different from the original hearing when the bill is first heard in appropriations. So we are hopeful that this year we will be able to make the school nurse consultant a reality and have them. We've gotten support from the Department of Education. And as I stated, there have been no votes in policy committee. So we're very hopeful that this will happen this year. All right, next bill we're looking at and co-sponsoring is the School-Based Health Office, AB 563 by Berman. And this legislation, as you can see, would establish an office of school-based programs within the Department of Ed. I mentioned before about the state, the federal legislation, IDEA, the Rehab Act, Section 504, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Those are the federal laws that mandate that schools have to provide health services for children with special needs in order for them to be in school and to be able to function. At the time these bills were passed, the feds promised 40% of the cost of caring for these children and providing programs and services for them. They would send that money to the states. Well, of course, it has not happened. I think the most we have ever gotten over the, and remember, this was back in the 70s. I think the most we've ever gotten, I think, is maybe close to 20%. And that will sometimes vary depending on the budgets. Also, remember at the federal level, they have not truly passed a budget in probably 10 or 12 years. And so we have what we call reconciliation. And many times when the feds do reconciliation, they either maintain whatever the funding was the year before, and essentially that's a cut because everything goes up every year. At least everything I'm aware of goes up every year. And so we wind up actually getting less money almost every year, every time they are unable to pass a full budget. And so it's reconciliation. The other part of the fact that they didn't send the entire funding, they also instituted 2 Medi-Cal-based programs and school-based programs. And this is called the local education agency, what they call schools, LEA, it's just another word, a name for schools, the billing option program. And then we have SMAL, which is the state Medicaid administrative activities program. The LAA BOT program reimburses schools for any healthcare services that have been approved by CMS, which, as you know, covers all healthcare in the United States, covers all of those practitioners, number one, and all of the activities that they have deemed should occur in schools. So that is the Medi-Cal LEA BOT program. All of school-based services that occur have to be ordered by a physician. So that means the child usually has health coverage, and most of our students we still do have. Unfortunately, with COVID, we've increased some of the uninsured kids, particularly those who are from undocumented families. But primarily, the state covers all of our kids from 0 to 18, even though they're undocumented. And I said that some of them are uninsured primarily because there's been some hesitancy because of issues at the federal level about public charge. some of those children have dropped off of the Medicare program. And so the schools have a mandate to essentially work with those parents, those families, in order to get these children and the parents as well, because some of those will also be covered here in the state of California for Medi-Cal coverage. So we can claim reimbursement. And as you know, Medi-Cal program is a 50-50. If the state puts up 50%, then the Fed send us 50%. And so that's what the LEA billing program is. So for example, we have a child who is asthmatic, may be too young to take care of his medication during the course of the day. That is on the list of services that could be reimbursed. And as long as the physician and the family have agreed that we can provide services for this child, that can assist this child or provide for this child his asthmatic medication, we can claim a reimbursement. So there's a code and it's sent in, and we get 50% of whatever that cost is returned to the schools. That money then is used, generally they say, and I think it may vary by school district, generally whatever practitioner is bringing in the money, that money comes back to that particular service. So for example, whatever services are reimbursed that are provided by school nurses, that will come back to that particular program. Same would be true for, what are the folks who, oh gosh, I can't think of the speech therapists. Apparently there's a lot of speech therapy, and of course those children certainly have special needs, and they are covered under an IEP, individual education plan, or IEP. The school nurses in 2015 introduced some legislation that codified the change from CMS, who said that every Medi-Cal eligible child now, if you're providing school services for them, you can claim reimbursement. Prior to December 2014, we could only claim reimbursement for those children that had an IEP or IFSP. And those were programs, again, that were part of the federal mandates that came down in the 70s. The MA program, SMA program, also we can claim reimbursement for that. And so, for example, if we go back to using the example of the child with asthma, if that child has to go for a doctor's appointment and it's during school time, and we arrange for that visit, then we can claim reimbursement for that. Again, it's part of the approved services that fall under the Medi-Cal programs for school-based services. So with this program, remember, Department of Healthcare Services oversees all the Medi-Cal programs in the state of California. And they have done a great job, although as with any state program, there are always some issues. We have attempted to set up a collaborative relationship with the Department of Education. What has happened is folks who speak education don't speak health, and folks who speak health don't speak education. And so it is critical that we start to formalize the arrangement between the Department of Education and the Department of Healthcare Services. And so that is the impetus behind the school-based health office. We are hopeful that if we can get both of these bills passed, AB 563 and AB 285, that school nurse consultant would be the go-between between education and healthcare services. Of course, that's something that has to be worked out, and that is our vision of how these two bills essentially would work together. And so we're also hopeful that even though, as I said earlier, we have 1,100 school districts in the state of California, only about half of them have applied for and have become Medi-Cal providers, meaning that any services provided in their schools, they could claim reimbursement. And so we see that this office would help school districts understand the importance of being part of that Medi-Cal program and the MA program, and thereby allow them to claim reimbursement, but also encourage them to hire licensed or credentialed school-based personnel to provide services. So not only your school nurses, but your school counselors, your school psychologists, your school social workers, some of them can claim reimbursement for the services that they provide, probably more under MOB than they can the LEA-BC program. So that is the basis for AB 563. And if there are questions, and I hope we'll have some time at the end in case I need to clarify some of the issues, or there's some questions about both of these programs. And then the third program that we're dealing with this year is a bill that was put out by Assemblywoman Rivas. It was carried last year by Assemblyman Gibson, but of course it was pulled, as Roxanne mentioned, that many bills were pulled last year because of COVID, and because it did not fit in with the issues that the governor has set as the key issues and mandates for last year. So this bill is back this year in school nurse credential. I don't know if you remember, but for those of you all who have children or maybe in the LA area, LA Unified was on strike for 2 years ago. And part of the negotiations to move them off strike was to promise to bring on an additional, I think it was additional 250 school nurses. And their position is that if they are able to set up a school nurse credential program, they believe that their nurses that they hired would get through the process much quicker and thereby would stay and remain school nurses within LA Unified. I'm trying to do this very quickly. I think I'm running out of time, but also this is not as simple as it seems. We do not believe that having a school district set up a school nurse credential program would be to the benefit of the potential students. We have 4 programs. They're affiliated with universities. This program, because it is not affiliated with a university, if somebody wanted to move on and get a master's or a doctor of nursing practice or PhD, they would have to go back and repeat classes. And so that is a disadvantage, we believe, to the nurses. We also believe that if they're willing to set up a program, why not scale up the existing programs? And so, as I said, this is not, it's not as simple as it seems. There are a lot of other issues that have to be looked at. We, of course, are opposed to this position. It did get out of Assembly Ed, and it's now headed to appropriations, and we will have to see what happens with that issue. Okay, fine. So schools are reopening. Very quickly, you want to run through this. We're going through now increased testing. Obviously, vaccine availability is a big issue. I think just earlier, late last week, they said Johnson & Johnson was running into some problems. And so those vaccines will be slower coming in. But we're starting to vaccinate the teachers and the staff. At Thursday, 16 years and older kids, they're starting to vaccinate our kids in the schools. And then, of course, the whole issues around vulnerable communities. Those numbers have been much lower than they have anticipated, so they're working on that. And Pfizer has a vaccine for children, and possibly by the summer they will get EUA, emergency use authorization, for the 12 to 15-year-olds that would be in the schools. So we're looking
Lydia,
forward
we need to wrap it up a little bit because Senator Caballero has entered the room.
Okay, fine. So
Sorry.
This is just a reinforcement of all the things that have been said in terms of how to set up relationships. And important point is that the key decision makers need to know who you are and what you do, especially when you go in to talk to them, and then find any questions if there's time.
Lydia, we are so very thankful. There was one really important question about using psych nurse practitioners for dealing with the upheaval in the pupils' health. But I will follow up with you. I will email you, and then we will share the answer with the participants. So we got to run because Senator Caballero is here, and she has a fantastic Senate resolution for us. Lydia,
Okay.
thank you so much. So appreciate your time. You're very kind.
Thank you. Yes.
All right, fine. Next time.
Thank you. Bye, Lydia.
All right.
We'll give you a couple of hours next time.
We're
I don't think I need that, but anyway.
Roxanne, take it away.
All right, so I do not see Senator Caballero on my screen.
Oh, good God.
Oh, maybe I do. Maybe just no camera on. Do you, see her?
My first go-to is Jared. Do we have
Jared?
Poor Jared.
I do not see her.
Uh-oh. This is fun.
Gotta love technology.
Yes.
I'm promoting her into the panelists, and then she should be able to be live here in just a moment.
There, I see her. I don't see her, but I see.
Oh.
There you are. So I'll go very quickly. I know we're getting ready to, I don't want to take any of your time, and we're getting ready to adjourn, but so Senator Caballero has, she's been a staunch advocate for her district, but her history is she was the first female mayor of Salinas. She served as Governor Brown's Secretary of Business, Consumer Services and Housing Agency. She served in the Assembly, and then she now currently represents the 12th Senate District, which encompasses Salinas Valley and parts of Central Valley. She works tirelessly on behalf of farmers, veterans, the disabled, families, seniors, teachers. I think I left out like apple pie and motherhood. And she's carried a variety of bills and a myriad of topics, including healthcare. And she has been a great friend to ANAC. And I'll hand it off to you, Senator.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for letting me in. There's nothing more frustrating than to be sitting there and not being able to talk and to know that they're waiting for you. So thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and hello to all of you. And thank you for inviting me to be here with you today. I just took off my mask, and so I know you know what that's like. You feel like you haven't breathed normally, and I truly appreciate. I mean, this pandemic has given me a real appreciation for the challenges that nurses face as they go into work and kind of how they have to protect themselves. So first, I would be remiss if I didn't start by thanking each and every one of you for the part that you've played during the COVID-19 pandemic. As nurses, you're on the front line battling rising infection rates, decreasing bed space, and most recently, the administration of the totally precious vaccines, which have only recently increased in supply. You put yourselves at risk each and every day to take care of those who are ill, and literally nurse people back to health. And with nursing shortages throughout the nation, we depend on each of you more in your respective workplaces. I know the work you do well. My mother is a nurse, and my sister is a nurse as well. And my sister is currently working, and I've had countless hours of conversations with her about how challenged she works in a hospital, how challenging it's been for her trying to protect her family, trying to survive the pandemic, and then also trying to help her patients survive the pandemic. So I really want to tell you from the bottom of my heart how much I really appreciate your hard work and commitment to people. You wouldn't do this work unless you loved people, and that's a true. It's a boon to all of us, but it really is what creates the opportunity for you to do your best work. And so I thank you. I thank you for that. I know that you're truly appreciated during this pandemic, but for me personally, want to give you my thanks during a time that's been truly stressful. Today, it gives me great pleasure to present a resolution on behalf of the California State Senate. I have it here. I have some bills that I'm working on, but you know what? I want to focus on this resolution more than on bills that I'm working on. Bills that I think help to improve medical services, in particular for the underserved communities in rural California. We know that farm workers have been severely impacted because they were determined to be essential workers, and then they work, live, and travel under circumstances that make it difficult for them to shelter in place and to not spread the virus. And so that's kind of my focus over the next few months. But I have this resolution. I'm going to show it to you so that you can see it, kind of a glare there. But this resolution, I think, says it all. And it is my honor to present this resolution to the American Nurses Association of California, and to tell you that I mean, I spent my whole life growing up and watching my mother serve as the individual in the family that people called on when they had a crisis. And she would dispense medical advice at 2:00 in the morning for a very large family. And she was the example of public service and of caring. And so to me, it just seems logical and right that I be the individual that carry the resolution on behalf of your organization, because I really do understand and know the challenge of nursing, and that, you know, most of the time there's a lack of appreciation for what nurses do. They're just taken for granted, right? Until you get sick or until you need help. And then what you realize is it's the nurses that actually do a majority of the work. And I tell my doctor that all the time. But for your nurses, you know, most of us wouldn't be happy with medicine today. So this past year, there's never been a better example of the real commitment that nurses have to keeping us all safe. So without any further ado, on behalf of the California State Senate, I'd like to present you with this certificate of recognition, this resolution, more than a certificate, really acknowledging your commitment to public health and acknowledging the commitment you have to keeping us all healthy. So thank you very much for allowing me to join you today and for allowing me to give you this resolution. And hopefully everybody continues to wear their masks, to maintain their distance, to wash their hands, and we'll be able to do this in person soon.
Thank you so much.
So we'll make sure you get this.
Senator Caballero, we are so happy to be connected with you, and we so appreciate you carrying the resolution for us. I know we started working on it last year, and then COVID hit and everything changed. Before we let you go, I know you have very busy schedule. I would like to ask you what we ask Assemblyman Wood. What would be your advice for nursing and nursing students and nurses, how to communicate with legislators? Because you do need to hear from us. And so I think that always there is the question about barriers. How can we reach out? What do you need from us? How can we help you to advance health and access to care?
Well, this whole the Capitol's closed right now, and so there's no in-person visits. But this won't last forever. I think the best way to communicate with legislators is to see people in person and to take and tell us your personal stories. There's nothing like hearing directly from individuals about the challenges, whether it's the lack of PPE, whether it's the ratios, you know, the ratios on different in different settings, all of that. It's really helpful to be able to hear directly from people. So generally what I tell people is there are the ledge days when everybody comes up here. Those are kind of crazy, and it's 10 or 15 minutes and you're out the door. You can have a lot more time if you visit at the district offices and bring in local nurses that have stories to tell about some of the challenges they're facing. And right now, I think what really makes a difference is there are some very sad stories about the public health deficiencies that we have in our communities. Part of the reason that essential workers have been, and they're essential workers and people of color that have been the most affected by the virus is because they don't have access to healthcare. And so the kinds of primary care healthcare that that we can provide that doesn't require a lot of medical cost is really important. You know, it's basic eating habits. It's basic things that people can do, lifetime changes that they can do that would improve their health, and that people could voluntarily take on themselves. And so I think that nurses play a really important role in all of that. So the more that you can talk about personal stories, I think the better it is.
Hopefully you hear about it at every family gathering.
Yes, I do. And, you know, I had a conversation. We didn't go anywhere for Thanksgiving or Christmas. We stayed home, and it's really sad because all of our family, my husband's and I, are somewhere else in another state, but we decided to stay home. And so my brother and sister and I did a Zoom on Christmas morning, right? My sister worked Christmas Eve, and she was in tears. She had spent, it was a 12-hour shift. It was terrible. The numbers were rising. She works in a small community hospital. And I told her, she really was in tears, and this was Christmas. And I asked her if she'd do me a little video. And she said, no, I can't do it. The hospital, you know, I just can't do it because of my position at the hospital. And I asked her to do that because I wanted to share it with people. I watch MSNBC, and I know that not everybody does, but I wanted something that was from the heart, that really spoke to what she was concerned about. And my sister is one of the individuals that's helping me. My brother and sister and I are trying to keep my mother, who's 91 and has Alzheimer's, at home. And so she goes on a weekly basis into my mother's home and spends time with her, and then does all the paperwork for her care. And so she can't afford to get sick. We can't afford for her to get sick. She's our nurse, you know, in the family. And so she's been, and, you know, it's been a really tough situation, and she couldn't do it. And I was sad that I couldn't share her story more, because I wanted people to know other than going and slapping people when you see them not doing the right thing, you gotta educate them, right? You need to have somebody talking about it. And I was disappointed that we couldn't do that. But I think, you know, just listening to her, I thought, you know, if you don't care about anything else, you have to care about what she's talking about, how, and I know that your association heard it all. There were ambulances with people in critical care that were waiting in the parking lot because there was no place to put, for hours, no place to put emergency patients in the emergency room. And they had COVID patients waiting in the emergency room to get a bed because they had no beds. And so, you know, everything had a consequence down the line. And in the end, what she was concerned about is that somebody was going to have to make decisions about who was going to live and who was going to die, because there weren't enough services for everyone that was coming in. And that to me, that was really compelling, and it broke my heart. But I think people just, if you don't have a nurse in the family, you can kind of ignore that. And I have a district where people were walking around saying it's just the virus. It's just like the flu. It's not anything more serious than that. And I wanted to be standing up for nurses everywhere that were saying we're inundated. We can't take this too much longer. So luckily,
that could be an opportunity for ANAC.
Well, and that's exactly right. I mean, I think, you know, I think sometimes people think that the individuals that speak on TV are actors or actresses. My sister looked like hell. She was just so tired and raggedy from running around trying to pull these long shifts. And she's a nursing supervisor now at her age, and she was going into COVID rooms because they didn't have enough nurses and they needed service. And so she was suiting up and going in. and was concerned because then she had to go back to her supervisor duties, and it was a mess. It was a mess. And so I really had an opportunity to see what, you know, that we there's some lessons learned. We need to figure out how to nip the next pandemic in the bud before it gets circulating throughout the entire country and the entire world. But it was the people on the front line, and it was nurses on the front line that really did a tremendous job.
Senator Caballero, what you're saying is so resonating with all of our board members who are joining us today. We have 8 board members. They are all full practicing nurses, plus they're serving on the board of a statewide organization. We have almost 600 people registered for today's event, and it's part nursing students, graduating nursing students, and part nursing colleagues already in practice. And what you're saying, I think that it's important that we hear it from you, that you as our elected official, you recognize the difficult position and the work that we do day in and day out. And I think that for many of us, hearing you, that you know our situation is really gratifying, because we know that we do have an advocate in California legislature such as yourself, and we couldn't be prouder to accept Senate resolution from you. So on behalf of all of my board members, again, 8 board members, and on behalf of all of our thousands of members strong of ANAC and 600 people participating today, it is my absolute honor to thank you for your time. Thank you for the resolution. We are so happy, and I'm almost starting to cry. So thank you so much. And Roxanne, do you have last parting words?
I would say thank you to your family members for their service. You know, we see veterans and we say, or people in the military say, thank you for your service. I say thank you to your family members and to every nurse and nursing student on this Zoom as well.
Thank you so much. We so appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow, wasn't this absolutely fantastic? I'm telling you, hey, we see Steve. I am telling you that the fact that we could end this fantastic event with Senator Caballero, with her poignant stories, what she just saw in her family, is absolutely incredible. And I know all of our board members, I wish that they could take time off, but they're all working, meanwhile trying to watch this. So if we have our president, Dr. Anita Girard, if we have her with us, Anita, would you like to say closing remarks?
Sure, Marquetta.
There she is.
What an incredible morning. So glad that you all could join us. Nursing is so strong. BJ, thank you for that great presentation, and just showing how it's actually not as difficult as we think to advocate for our profession for healthcare for our communities. And it's just simple steps like finding your legislator, figuring out, contact people, contact our office, contact any of us, we'll help you. There's templates, there's ways to easily go about it, and you don't have to be scared. I remember the first time I went to Washington, D.C., and I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? And then they gave me all the templates. I'm like, oh, I got this. This is fine. So make sure you keep going and keep asking questions and advocating. And there's lots of help out there. So don't shy away from it. Just embrace it. You were born to be an advocate. You're a nurse. Just embrace it. So thank you. Thank the office. Thanks, Roxanne, for joining us today. I think it's been an incredible session. I can't wait for our conference tomorrow. So really appreciate all of you.
Thank you so much, Anita. And with that, we all thank you for your time. We thank you for your active chat on YouTube. We've tried to monitor, put down questions, put down questions on paper, and trying to reach out to our speakers and get some answers for you. This has been truly a fantastic event, and Senator Caballero really got me a little bit emotional, which it's actually nice to see that there is an elected official who really understands where we are. Assemblyman Wood was just absolutely fantastic. Lydia, thank you so much for all your expertise and advocating on behalf of school nurses and public health nurses. BJ and Janet Hebler from ANA, you both were absolutely fantastic. My God, did I forget anybody else? Oh yeah, Roxanne, thank you so much for co-leading with me and for doing this fantastic event. So I just want to make sure that I thank our board members, Anita.
If they all could come on camera, that'd be great. So we can at least see each other today.
I think many of our board members are already back at work, but Anita, Philip Batista, Ruth Rosenblum, Kelly Bell, Dr. Robin Nelson, Dr. Chris Tarver, oh my God, Zach Huddleston, and who did I forget? Oh my God, this is bad. I'm not gonna get very good evaluation if I can remember my last board member.
Kelly Bell.
And my legislative director. So here is Zach. Zach, do you want to say something, please?
Pressure's on.
Pressure's on, man.
I don't know how I feel about that, Marquetta. Just put me on the spot, but thank you. I can't be more excited to see how many people we are expected and have had live for this wonderful event. And I just love reading all the comments on the YouTube video because, I'm all watching. And I want to thank all the students for coming and watching as well. It's amazing because this can't continue without you guys, and we definitely need your involvement early on because we need those fresh young minds as well. So keep up the strong work, you emerging leaders, and we hope to see you soon in our ranks.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Dr. Robin Nelson.
What can I say? It's a privilege to be a member of ANA California and to be a nurse.
Well, thank you so much. And plus, I just want to make sure one more time that we thank Robin and Steve from West Coast University for helping us with this fantastic event, for rolling it over to YouTube, for helping us with Zoom platform, helping us with anything what we needed today. We couldn't do it without you. And I think that all of our other board members are back working. So thank you all. Again, thank you so much for your time. We so loved being with you this morning, and I am going to finish my morning coffee, take a deep breath, and go back to work. Thank you so much. You take good care.